Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Kayla lay curled up on the dirty mattress, less hungry that way. It was the third day she couldn't bring herself to go to the dumpster where the homeless gathered in the evenings looking for food. She watched from afar with shuddering shrieks of joy as they retrieved bags and containers of leftover food from the homeless insides of the filthy dumpster. Then they sat down nearby and gorged themselves on what they could find. No, I can't do this, Kayla thought. I wouldn't be one of those unfortunates if my parents could see what I've become. Hot tears burned her cheeks, and she wrapped herself in an old stretchy sweater that hung on her like a hanger, but saved her from the chill of the night. A couple days ago, I had everything: a house, a business that my parents inherited from me, money and social standing. And today, I'm sheltering from the rain and wind in a filthy shed that the builders were too lazy to take with them. Oh my God! The girl folded her hands in prayer. Help me. Do not let me die of cold. I have not offended you in any way. Suddenly, Kayla heard the sound of a car pulling up, and she cautiously peeked out of her hiding place. An expensive car pulled up next to the trash cans. A distinguished-looking man got out and took 2 trash bags out of the trunk. He placed them carefully by the trash cans and drove off. Kayla hesitated a moment, fearing that the owner would change his mind and return, then rushed to them, grabbed them, and where did the strength come from? And dragged the wagon. Barely catching her breath, she examined her loot and opened the first bag. Mother dear! She gasped and opened the second one with trembling hands. My God! The girl raised her eyes to the sky. Thank you, you heard my prayers. Kayla, all in black, stared blankly at the grave mound under which her parents had found their final resting place. Familiar and strangers approached her, offering condolences, and she still couldn't believe her parents were gone. Kayla was the only daughter in the family. The father managed to spin off well and create a good business, which should have been inherited by the son. But unfortunately, the couple had only one daughter. The girl did not disappoint her father and became a worthy heiress, received a good education. Just a few days ago, they were talking about all sorts of little things, making plans for a vacation. But these plans were not destined to come true. The accident took the lives of both of them. The woman was left alone, and if it were not for her husband, who all the time while the funeral ceremony was going on, supported her in every possible way, probably would not have stood it, would have fallen into despair. Let's go. Carefully, Gary put his arm around his shoulders. It's time to go home. You're shivering. Yeah. As if awakened from a slumber, Kayla said. Let's go home. I'm tired and I want to be alone. Thank you for being here. Gary put his grief-stricken wife in the car and drove her home. He looked at her sympathetically in the rearview mirror, but didn't say anything, seeing that she didn't want to talk right now. Half an hour later, they pulled up to the house. Gary helped the woman out of the car and opened the front door for her. Honey, you can't be so sad, the man said. You can't change anything. He carefully undressed her and took her into the living room. Think about yourself. You'll have to learn to live without them. Kayla sat at the table in the living room for a long time. In the center of the table was a photo from which her smiling parents looked at her. Honey, her husband called out to her. Stop sitting, you need to sleep. Who will feel better if you get sick? He walked over to her, picked her up like a little girl in his arms, and carried her into the bedroom. Kayla met Gary at a friend's birthday party. She noticed that a handsome young man kept his eyes on her all evening, but she didn't dare to approach him. Who is it? asked the girl from the hostess of the evening. Did she like him? She laughed. This is Gary, a very promising young man. He is not from our circle. His family is not rich, but he is very smart and courteous. I suggest you take a good look at him. He'd make the perfect husband. That night, Gary dared to approach Kayla. May I have this dance? The young man bowed his head gallantly to the girl. She gave him her hand and accepted the invitation. I see you are alone here, but where is your companion? Alas, there is no one worthy. Kayla smiled playfully at her partner. With whom would I want to share tonight? If I had at least one chance in 1,000 to accompany you tonight, I wouldn't let you get bored. Such a beautiful girl just can't stay alone for long. Kayla laughed. She liked the man's attention. The blatant flattery was naive and ingenuous, but not repulsive. My name is Gary. He introduced himself. And you, Kayla? I couldn't resist asking your friend for the name of the girl I liked. He watched her eyes carefully, noticing the smile on her lips. He smiled in return as well. The sadness was finally gone from your gray eyes. You move well. Did you take dancing lessons? The girl is from a rich family, has all the possible schools, art, music, dance of course, knowledge of foreign languages, and a good education. My father dreamed of an heir, and I was born. Your husband will be lucky. Gary said dreamily. It's rare to meet smart women these days. The music ended, and the young people did not leave each other's side. The young man suggested a walk in the garden. The evening was quiet. They hid in a gazebo from prying eyes. Maybe I wouldn't want to know so much, but I have to live up to my status because someday I'll have to take care of business. Daddy reminds me of that regularly. No, the young man exclaimed jokingly. There will be a real man next to you who will take on his shoulders all the worries about you. Didn't I tell you that I can predict the future? He raised his eyes enigmatically to the sky. I see that soon you will love a blue-eyed, black-haired, tall man, well-built, without bad habits. The character described is remarkably like you. Kayla accepted the flower that had appeared in the hands of her new acquaintance. The young man pressed her hands to his chest. Can you hear my heart beating? You've won me over from the first moment. I don't want to part with you. He brought her hands to his lips. That evening, Gary walked Kayla home. She was pleasantly surprised that he didn't even make an attempt to kiss her. The girl was bewitched by him. Daughter? Her mother met her in the living room. You're glowing. Are you in love? Who is he? The father asked. Do we know his parents? Before he enters our family, I would like to know as much about him as possible. No, Daddy. Kayla kissed her parents and spun around the room, still under the influence of the interaction with the young man. His parents aren't rich, but he's so. She rushed to hug her mother. You're not snobs, are you? You're not going to force me to marry a man from our circle, are you? You have to live with him. Father replied judiciously. I've only known him for a few hours, and it seems I've waited all my life to meet him. I don't want to think about anyone else. Do you believe in love at first sight? What's important to us is that you're happy. You just take your time, look at him carefully, and if he loves not your money, but you, we will not object and bless your marriage. Father is right. Mother is supportive. One must choose with one's heart. We will be happy to accept him into our family, just so that you, my daughter, be happy. Oh, Mom! Kayla thought, wrapped in some old clothes picked up at the dump and trying to protect herself from the chill of the night in the unheated construction trailer. If you had told your gullible daughter that besides the heart, you should listen to your head, I would not have to lie here on a dirty mattress. How could you, with your vast life experience, not see through a lying man? It's not for me to say that. You truly believed in my family's well-being. The woman tried to forget herself with a disturbing dream, and the memory brought her back to the time when she was truly happy. Kayla was taking the death of her parents hard. She hadn't really gotten into business before, and now, grief-stricken, she had shifted all her worries onto her husband's shoulders. She stopped leaving the house, sat all day long in his father's office, did not answer the calls of friends. She stopped caring about anything at all. "Honey!" Gary, dressed in a strict dark suit, was in high spirits. His black hair was neatly styled, his blue eyes sparkling. He adjusted the collar of his carefully pressed shirt, walked over to his wife and kissed her. "Did you sleep badly again?" "Look at you. You don't look after yourself at all. You cannot kill yourself like that. It's been 6 months, and you can't reconcile with the death of your parents. Who's better off because you're crying from morning till night? You don't show up at the firm at all. Come on, get a grip. Life doesn't stand still. I don't think your father would have been happy with your condition. He hoped you'd carry on his business, not get depressed." Gary. Kayla looked up at her husband with tear-filled eyes. I want you to take over the firm. I don't know anything about it anyway. You were in charge of things under your father. It's the right thing to do, especially now that I don't have the energy to run the business. I'm sorry I put all this on you, but it's your father." The man objected. He wanted you to run everything. I can't disobey his will, and it's in the will. Why don't we take our time? You come to your senses and get to the bottom of this, and I'll help you. Gary, my love, I trust you. The woman said sadly, "You're a man. You're still in charge of all my affairs, only with my knowledge. I want to sign everything over to you so that you can dispose of everything without looking back. How stupid am I? Where were my eyes?" Kayla was brought back from memory to reality. How could I not see the falsity in my husband's words and actions? How could I have failed to notice the skillfully laid nets for me? I handed over the keys to the business, which my father built and kept for me, to this greedy swindler. I didn't feel he only wanted me for my money. He so skillfully built his plan that he managed to enrich himself at our expense and take over everything that I inherited from my parents. Business, real estate, money, everything was in his hands. With my own money, he hired people to help him cook up the deal and make him the unanimous owner of everything that belonged to my family. And then, Kayla burst into tears. "Gary, what took you so long?" Capriciously, the wife asked her husband when she heard the front door slam. She was sitting on the sofa in the living room reading a book, with her shoulder-length blonde hair loose and in soft, cozy pajamas. She looked very touching amidst the rich furnishings of the living room. I was about to go to bed, and it is wrong for a husband and wife to go to bed at the same time. They have something to do in bed together. Get undressed, I miss you. Shall we go to the bedroom? Tired, my dear husband? She approached the man, wrapped her arms around his neck, wanted to kiss him, but Gary squeezed her wrist painfully and took a step back. As of today, you and I are no longer husband and wife. He looked at the woman squeamishly. And anyway, I'm the boss here now, and I don't want any stranger in my house. Gary, is this a joke? Kayla stared at her husband, perplexed. It's not a joke. No, it's not a joke. The man took the documents out of his briefcase and threw them on the coffee table. My dream has come true. I'm rich. This is my house. He spread his arms and shook them, smiling contentedly. Only mine, and you don't belong here. What do you mean you're home? Kayla was indignant. Actually, it's my parents' house. I inherited it. I don't want to offend your ego, but you have nothing to do with this house. I don't know why you're even having this conversation." "Wrong." Gary smirked. "You signed over your property and business to me, and now I own it, but you have nothing to do with it. What are you trying to say?" "I don't know what's going on." Fear crept into the woman's heart. "Explain to me exactly why you're scaring me." "I don't like this kind of talk. I don't want to hear anything." She put her hands over her ears and shook her head. "Stop it right now. Are you trying to make me angry? You did it. How could it be that you own everything? It's simple." Gary sat down on the couch without taking off his clothes and put his leg over his foot. "I transferred all your inheritance to myself. You have nothing now. You're a pauper. But I gave you permission to run our business, and I'm still the owner of the business. We can both have everything. We're husband and wife." "Yes, but you and I have nothing else in common. You're not my wife." He pulled out his passport and showed me the divorce stamp. "So I own all the property in the business, and you've got nothing." "But I did not give my consent to the divorce," Kayla said confusedly, looking into her husband's blue, cold eyes. "You couldn't divorce me, and no one needs the consent of the other party if you have a lot of money." He jumped to his feet. "I have plenty now. Get out. I don't want to see you again. You don't know how long I've waited for this moment, when I could kick you out the door in the middle of nowhere. I'm so sick of being a foster kid. You can't do this to me." Kayla screamed. "Tell me this is a joke." "Evil but still a joke. Stop it now. No one thought you were adopted. My parents truly loved you as their son. So much so that they left everything to you." Gary shouted angrily. "Though I was the one who ran the business, I was supposed to be the head of the firm, not your errand boy. They just didn't have time to change the will." Kayla tried to talk some sense into her husband. "You can't just get rid of me." "I can, because it's all mine now. Don't you get it yet?" "No, I'm dead serious about getting you out of here right now. I've wasted enough time on you already." He grabbed her shoulder painfully, spun her toward the door, and shoved her so hard that she almost fell. "Get out of my house. I don't want to see you. Forget your way in here. Gary, I love you." The woman looked at her husband pleadingly. "And you said you did. We dreamed of having children. Don't you remember that? We dreamed of traveling together. Remember how good we were together? We loved each other. Where did it all go overnight? Did I love you?" He laughed, and there was so much mockery in that laugh that Kayla realized his husband wasn't joking. "Never, do you hear me? I never loved you. I wanted your money. From the first minute I realized you didn't know anything about business. It would have been easy to fool around, but not your daddy. And then I got lucky, a car accident. I realized my hands were free now. You, by your own laziness, rewrote everything on me. You did not want to delve into the intricacies of business, preferred to indulge in grief for the dead parents, and then I just needed a divorce. That was no problem at all. Great, I did it. This is exactly what I dreamed of from the first day I met you, when I found out you were from a rich family. You fell in love with me like a cat, hanging all over me, dreaming of getting married as soon as possible. So I got married, since you were so eager, and waited for an opportunity. Get out of my life forever, I mean it. If it's not a joke." Kayla tried to resist her husband's rudeness. "Let me at least change. I'm not going out in my pajamas, am I? How am I going to show up there looking like this?" She felt that her self-control was about to leave her, and she would cry. How could her husband have done this to her? After all, there are personal things I want to take with me, documents. I can't even get a job without a passport. I'd like to get some money, at least for the first time. I'm not interested in your wishes. There's nothing of yours here. Everything is mine. Understand? He pushed her out again. Get out of my house. You're not getting a dime. Now feel what it's like to be poorer than a church rat. Gary, for God's sake, you can't put me out on the street like this, for God's sake. Who's gonna stop me? Your daddy? He laughed wryly. Ah, there isn't one. No one will help you. I'm finally going to do something I've wanted to do for a long time. Get out. You have no right to be in my house. He pushed a frightened Kayla outside and closed the door behind her. You should be thankful that I let you leave instead of calling the police and accusing you of trying to break into someone else's house, and I could have had you thrown in jail. So don't thank me, but dismiss your presence. Nobody would have believed you. Everybody in the neighborhood knows whose house it is. When you have money, you can buy any witness you want. Don't make me resort to extreme measures. Go away. Even tears won't help you today. The woman stood on the doorstep of the house her father had built, dreaming of living in a big family. What has happened to us? She thought. Why did Gary, so mean to me, take advantage of my helplessness? How come I gave my heart to the wrong man? How stupid of me. She berated herself. Kayla wandered down the dark alley, tears flowing. I can't get my father's business back and prove that Gary is a fraud and took advantage of the situation. After all, I signed the papers of my own free will and gave up what I had. I can't even file a police report because I don't have a passport. What should I do? Who do I look to for protection? Daddy, I miss you so much. You would definitely put this scoundrel, my husband, now ex-husband, in his place. No one can help me but you. But you're not here. I'm alone and I don't know where to go. Her feet led her to an abandoned construction trailer. No one had been there for a long time. There was a dirty, dusty mattress in the corner. Of course, it was not what she was used to, but the tired and exhausted woman had no choice. She sank down onto the mattress, squeezed herself into a lump, and closed her eyes. Nothing. Thought she was falling into oblivion. I'm going home tomorrow, so maybe Gary's just trying to teach me a lesson. I don't know why, though, but I'll stay here for now. I'll get a better morning. My nerves were taut as a string. Kayla couldn't sleep for a long time, but finally tiredness took its toll. Kayla was awakened by the morning chill. Fall was approaching, so pajamas weren't the most appropriate clothing. The woman stood up, stretched out her legs that were stiff from the uncomfortable position, and walked toward the house. She glanced around from time to time to make sure she didn't run into anyone she knew. Kayla was embarrassed to be walking around in her pajamas, and she hoped her husband had come to his senses overnight and would at least give her a chance to pick up her things. She rang the bell. The door immediately swung open as if Gary had been expecting her arrival. What do you want? Blocking the doorway, her husband looked at Kayla contemptuously. Gary? The woman shuffled from foot to foot in the cold, her voice shaking, the sharp wind chilling her to the bone, her silk pajamas chilling rather than warming. We fought enough. I don't know what you were trying to prove to me, but let's call it a day. Will you let me go inside and get my things? What? It's my house. Everything in it is mine. It's not your stuff. Go back where you came from. Did you really think I'd change my mind overnight? You were wrong. We have nothing to talk about. Why do you need all this? My family has never done anything to hurt you. On the contrary, my father tried to teach you everything. I don't understand what happened. Don't you have any sympathy for me? I'm not going to claim anything, but at least let me dress like a human being. I'm ashamed to appear in public like this. And you go to the garbage dump. There are a lot of suitable things for people like you. He openly mocked his ex-wife, then threw angrily. Get away from my house and don't show up here again, or I'll call the police. Go away. You won't get anything anyway. He pushed Kayla away and closed the door. The woman, swallowing her tears, walked back to the carriage house. There at least she could take shelter from the wind. She huddled again in a corner, tucked her legs under her, and fell silent, trying to keep warm, her stomach churning with hunger. We should wait until dark, she thought. I can't just walk around town in my pajamas. The first patrol car will pick me up, and I have no ID. Why don't we really look at the clothes? People often leave unwanted clothes by the trash cans. Embarrassing? Yes, but I can't do otherwise, or I risk freezing to death. I have no other choice if I'm going to find out the reason for my husband's strange behavior. She kept telling herself. When it got dark, the woman got out of her hiding place and approached the garbage cans. There were several bags lying around. The next day, she managed to get to her friend who lived nearby, stopped at the entrance and rang the intercom. Yes, hello. She heard her friend's sleepy voice. Lucy? Worried, the woman said, It's Kayla. Let me in. I need to talk to you. Kayla? The woman exclaimed in surprise. What happened? Why are you wearing such a strange outfit? The woman saw bewilderment and contempt in the eyes of her acquaintance. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Please open the door. I'm not comfortable standing outside. It's cold. What do you want from me? You see, Kayla spoke in a hurry. Gary and I had a fight. He won't let me in the house. What do you want from me? I don't have any money. You know I'm living on my father's handouts, right? Why don't you lend me your stuff and some money? I just haven't eaten since yesterday. Didn't he even leave you a card? No, he threw me outside in my pajamas. That's how it is. The girl stopped talking. I'm sorry. Lucy suddenly spoke in a haughty tone. I don't have an almshouse here. I don't give to beggars. I don't want my surroundings to rumor about me, as if I communicate with homeless people. I can't go to your house like this. I'm sorry, I don't have time to talk to you. I'm in a hurry to go to the beauty parlor. I have an appointment tonight. I have no desire to listen to you complain about your husband. I wasn't hired to be your shoulder to cry on. Don't come to me again. She hung up. Lucy, we're friends. Kayla tried to shout to her, but the answer was silence. How could it be? The woman was upset, crushed. We've been friends for years. I've helped her out so many times, and now that I need help, she just cut me out of her life. What am I supposed to do? Kayla thought. Turning around, the woman happened to see a sign for the police department. That's where I need to go, she rejoiced. This place will definitely help. She opened the door with determination. Hey, bum! A young policeman at the entrance shouted at her. Where are you going? Why do you allow yourself to insult me? The woman was indignant. You don't know anything about me. I don't need to know anything. Get out of here, get some sleep. But I don't drink. I need help. We know you. The policeman laughed. Don't have enough for a bottle? I don't serve in the morning. I need to get my papers back. My husband took them from me. And you have a husband, so go to him. Don't hang around here. How dare you talk to me like that? I need help. Who do I turn to? Listen, the young man looked threateningly at the intruder. Get out of here before I put you away for 15 days. Settle your family affairs amongst yourselves. She's going to write a statement here. How smart is she? I've got enough to deal with without you. Go on. He grabbed Kayla under the elbow and led her toward the exit. The whole place stank. You're disgusting to touch. Don't make me have to use force. The policeman pushed her out into the street. God, she prayed to herself. Help me to live. Nobody wants to help me, not even the police can give me justice. But I will not give up for anything. You only help me, teach me where to go next." So, racing thoughts in her head, Kayla walked back to the wagon. It was getting dusk outside. She saw some crates put up from a nearby store, next to the trash cans. The woman hesitantly approached, looking around, and saw containers of salads, bread, some other food. Forgetting her pride, she grabbed what was at hand and returned to the wagon. Kayla greedily ate the discarded food and thanked the store employees for the fact that the food was quite tolerable. Judging by the smell, not the first freshness, but the woman didn't care. She was disgusted to realize that she had stooped to eating from a dumpster, but the shame was drowned out by a great desire not to starve to death and to punish the offender. "I'll do anything to make justice prevail." Eating the food, Kayla swore to herself. Suddenly she heard the noise of a car engine. The woman cautiously peeked out of her hiding place. An expensive foreign car stopped near the garbage cans. The driver got out, placed 2 garbage bags by the bins, returned to the car, and immediately disappeared from the eyes of the astonished Kayla. She, not thinking long, rushed to the trash can, knowing that it was impossible to delay. There would be many people who wanted such a tidbit. She picked up the bags, and where did she get the strength from? Dragged them to the wagon. After a little breathing, opened it and marveled. Both bags were filled with things that can turn a gray mouse into a queen. "Jesus." Kayla raised her hands to the sky. "Did you hear my prayers? You sent me to the help of a man who had given me such a precious gift." She went through the contents of the packages. "I can't believe my eyes." The woman rejoiced. "And cosmetics, and everything necessary for hygiene, even a comb." She laughed. "What's this?" Kayla took the velvet box in her hands. "Jewelry? Wow. No, I'll hide them for now, in case this man comes to his senses and comes back for them. I don't want any trouble." "Oh my God! Fill the life of the man who gave me this treasure with grace. Now everything will be all right." Laughing, she tried on the dress. It was just right for her, a little long, but she looked great in heels. "Tomorrow I'll go and write an application about the loss of my passport and let them try to refuse me." She shook her fist at the darkness. That night, Kayla slept like a dead woman. She didn't feel hungry from the excitement. She didn't even feel cold, and in the morning, having cleaned herself up, she went to the passport office first thing in the morning. No one even thought of chasing away a pretty, richly dressed young woman. Carefully styled, thick blonde hair and skillfully applied makeup left no doubt that the stranger was from high society. Stepping outside from the stuffy office, Kayla exposed her face to the last warm ray of sunshine and squeezed her eyes shut, breathing in the fresh, cool fall air. She walked into the thrift store and handed over one of the chains. "I'm not doing anything wrong," she thought as she paid the passport fee. "I will return the money to the owner if necessary, and I need the passport to get a job." The woman went to the store, bought herself a bottle of kefir and a fresh, crispy bun. What a blessing it was to eat proper food instead of rummaging through a garbage can. She enjoyed, sent piece after piece into her mouth, and savored every sip of kefir, and it seemed that it was the most delicious thing she had ever eaten in her life. God bless the man who gave me a chance to start living again. I'll get my papers, rent a cheap room, and one day I'll deal with my ex-husband, pay back every cent. I'll take back the business he swindled out of me, and if I can't get it back, I'll make even more money and ruin Gary, and I won't feel sorry for him one bit. I'd rather destroy my father's business with my own hands than have his business left in the hands of that unworthy man. But it's your own fault, isn't it? An inner voice whispered, You entrusted him with the management of your father's business. It's nothing, she answered herself. There will be a holiday on my street, but I promise that I will never open my soul to any man again. Adam sat at the meeting, listened to the customers' wishes, took notes, and waited for the moment of the deal. At such moments, he could think of nothing else. Even the phone, which did not stop ringing during the day, could not distract him from his work. Suddenly, the phone came to life and a message popped up on the screen. While you are earning money, your wife is having fun with her lover. Then came a photo. The man turned pale. His Nora, his beloved wife in the arms of a stranger. What the hell is this? He thought, this can't be true. What if it is? Jealousy flared up inside. Adam stood up. I apologize. I'm in a bit of trouble. I have to leave immediately. Can you finish without me? My deputy is on top of signing the deal. Mason? He turned to the young man who was making the presentation. I know you won't let me down. I'll be back in a couple hours. Yeah, I'll do it, Adam. Don't worry. I hope nothing serious has happened. Mason looked worriedly at the chief. I don't know yet. Adam apologized and jumped out of the meeting room. The man ran headlong into the parking lot. I have to make sure the photo is authentic. He thought as he got behind the wheel, and the car sped off. I want to look the traitor in the eye. I want to hear what she has to say for herself. It's time to set things straight. He glanced at the screen once more, checking against the address given by the message. A few minutes later, Adam pulled up outside the hotel and turned off the engine, sat for a few minutes, gathering his strength, then abruptly swung open the door and staggered into the building. What if the message and the photo were sent to sabotage a good deal, and all I saw was Photoshop? Suddenly he thought, then I'll dig up the ground, but I'll find the person who benefited from it. He'll be held accountable for trying to sully my wife's honorable name. Although, Adam clenched his fists. The photo looks too much like the truth. All right, we'll figure it out. He decided, approaching the receptionist's desk. The girl? Smiling with only one lip, Adam said, My wife prepared a surprise for me and said that she would wait for me in the room of this hotel. He dictated his wife's details. A key, would you be so kind? The girl did not even call the room to make sure whether they really want to see a new guest in the room, and gave the key. Would you like a bouquet of flowers in your room? The receptionist offered. Thank you. My boss will give me a ride. Adam lied, trembling with excitement. The girl shrugged her shoulders, but did not object. The man quickly went up to the floor. He stood at the door, hesitating to open it. Finally, he gathered his courage and entered the room. The first person the man saw was the hapless lover. He was walking around in his underpants, holding a bottle of sparkling wine in his hand, occasionally touching the neck. Pleasant music was playing. Women's laughter was heard. Adam? Emma was stunned. How are you here? Adam, without answering, walked into the room. The lover was speechless. He tried to say something, but only silently opened his mouth. The trader's wife ran in, hurriedly pulling the blanket over herself. Adam, this all means nothing to me. It's not what you thought. What was I supposed to think? It's all very clear. You didn't rent such an expensive room for a tea party, did you? Adam clutched at his heart, trying to stop the pain. Darling, Nora, throwing back the blanket, rolled off the bed and rushed to her husband. Are you sick? Yes, I feel sick. Slowly, Adam said, pulling away from her friend, who realized that she was standing in front of her husband in a semi-transparent red negligee, and immediately retreated, grabbing the bedspread. I feel sick because I've been fooled all this time." He tried to calm his rapid breathing. "Emil?" He turned to the man still standing in his underwear and with the bottle in his hand. "You've been to our house. I trusted you. Not a single family holiday was without you. While I was away on business, you were assigned to look after my wife, and you took advantage of my absence and climbed into someone else's bed. You did, Nora." Turned to his wife, the deceived man. "You claimed Emil was your cousin. Lied then, and I, a blind man, had nothing against him. Hosted him in my house, pleasured him in every possible way. How could he be a cousin? I'd love to punch you in your satisfied face." He swung at his wife's lover, who recoiled in fright. "I won't get my hands dirty. Go on." Emil yelled. He still held the bottle in his hand and didn't get dressed. "It'll only cost you," the man said defiantly, recovering from his fright. He realized that Adam had no intention of fighting him. "I'll make such a fuss, I'll make a big deal out of it." "I know, that's why I won't get my hands dirty. You can't solve anything with your fists anyway, and I don't want to do time for such a bastard. One thing to defend the right thing, or stand up for someone. But here there is nothing to protect, no honor or conscience left at the unworthy wife. I'll make it easy." He grabbed Nora's purse, opened it and took out the key to the apartment. "I don't want you in my house." He turned to his wife. "Stay in what you wore to meet your lover." "Adam," the woman whimpered. She, wrapped in a blanket, reached up to kiss her husband. "Don't be angry. It was a momentary weakness." "Yes, I admit I'm trashy, but you're not home all the time. Do you want me to send him away now? I'll never open the door to our home where you and I were happy again." Key word we were. Adam answered her harshly. "We are no more, just as there is nothing of yours in my house, all bought by me and with my money. You will get nothing in the divorce. You made your own choice. I won't get in your way, lovers." The man grinned bitterly and headed for the door. "Adam, you can't leave me. You said you loved me." Realizing that her husband was serious, Nora exclaimed, "I will die without you." "Without my money, you mean?" The man looked away. "It's no longer my concern. Let Emil provide you with a secure existence." "Hey, Emil." He turned mockingly to his lover. "She loves expensive salons and clothes from the latest European collections." "Thank you. You don't even realize what a favor you've done me. Goodbye, my friends." He slammed the door, stood in the corridor, coming to his senses. Behind the ostensible mockery, there was despair, and it was so heavy that he wanted to howl. Barely moving his feet, Adam returned to the hotel lobby, returned the room keys to the receptionist, and went home. The girl looked at him carefully, but did not dare to ask him anything. She felt that the visitor was not in the right state to answer questions. The man did not remember how he got into the car, how he got to the apartment. He only came to his senses when he tried to insert the key into the keyhole of the door of his apartment with shaking hands. He entered without turning on the light, and without undressing, threw himself on the bed, beat his fists on the soft bed until he was exhausted. Soon he fell asleep. I lay there for a long time, trying to realize what had happened. I was deceived by the woman I loved so dearly, he thought, to whom I had opened my soul. She betrayed me, spit on my feelings, and I trusted her. My wife, for whom I would have done anything, had led me astray for so long. Did she ever love me, or was it all for money? He groaned with impotent anger at his gullibility. The man had not expected that he would be so painful to experience the separation from his unfaithful wife. They were having a good time at my expense. I did not spare anything for her. She never needed anything, and did not know where the money comes from. I worked like a hard laborer so that my beloved had everything she wanted, repaid with black ingratitude. Adam rolled over onto his back, lying with his arms spread, staring aimlessly at the ceiling. A dark, agonizing emptiness had settled in his heart, which had recently been filled with love. He closed his eyes. Immediately his imagination drew the frightened face of his wife when she realized that the deception was revealed. Just then the insistent ringing of the doorbell sounded. Adam did not move from his seat. He didn't want to see anyone. Then there was a drumming at the door, and he heard Nora's voice. Reluctantly, he got up and went out into the hallway. "Adam," his wife begged him. "Open the door, please. I know you're home. Let me explain everything." "Don't be silent." The artificial flames in the electric fireplace were not soothing. Their reddish tongues reminded Adam of the bloody wounds his wife's adultery had left on his heart. We loved to sit in that chair, hugging and clinging to each other. The man spoke regretfully as he watched the flames dance behind the glass door of the fireplace. His voice echoed in the empty apartment. We weren't cramped then. We wanted to stay close to each other all our lives and grow old together. And we also dreamed that in the evenings we would walk along the beach, holding hands, listening to the splash of the waves and admiring the sunset. Yes, only next to me I saw a completely different person, not this trash, who traded me for a smarmy lover. She had derailed my whole life, destroyed my faith in good, tender feelings. He closed his eyes again, remembering the first time he'd met Nora. Adam stopped for a bite to eat at his favorite cafe. He was a regular here, so the table where he usually had breakfast was always free. The man settled down in his usual place and looked around while waiting for the waiter. His attention was attracted by a girl. She impatiently gestured, tried to hide behind her ear, not obedient strand of thick black hair, which lay in waves on her shoulders. The stranger was crying, sobbing like a little child, sighing convulsively, her narrow shoulders shuddering. She did not have time to wipe away the large tears that rolled from her eyes, and they fell on her dress, leaving a wet trail. Adam smiled. Such a picture would not leave anyone indifferent. He waved to the waiter, pointing to the table where the stranger was sitting. He stood up, walked over to her, and sat down across from her without asking permission. "Hello, my heart bleeds when I see a girl crying." He smiled broadly, trying to draw attention to himself. "Can I help you?" He whispered something in the waiter's ear, while he looked at his vis-a-vis with interest. The girl looked at him with tear-stained eyes, wiping her swollen nose with a paper napkin. It was so touching that the man's heart trembled. It struck Adam that the stranger was not wearing makeup. She didn't need it, though. Dark, long, fluffy eyelashes framed expressive brown eyes, eyebrows, gracefully arched, the envy of any beauty. She definitely liked him. "You can't help me," the girl said with a curve of her plump lips. "I've failed the session, and it's a total disaster for all my dreams." Guessing that the stranger probably came from the province, there are no such knave people in the city. Adam decided to deal with the situation, at least to support the hapless student. Meanwhile, the waiter brought the order. "Will you have breakfast with me?" The man offered. "I don't have the money to pay for it." The girl cast a hungry look at the table, where the waiter put out plates of salads, cakes, and cups of coffee. All that was left was to buy a return ticket. He picked up her empty water glass. "Do you really think I've let a woman pay for a table? What kind of men have you had to socialize with?" Adam looked at her perplexed. "Eat and tell me in detail what happened to you." "My name is Adam, by the way. What's yours?" "I'm Nora." The girl blushed embarrassedly. The usual story. She sobbed again. I couldn't pass the session, so I'll have to take a leave of absence. They'll kick me out of the dormitory now, so I have nowhere to live. And you don't want to go home? Adam finished her thought. Where to? Nora burst into flames. To the village? What would I do there? No work, no prospects. Mother, always suffering from lack of money. Father drunk from morning to night. Their gardens for me, that's where they sit. She slashed herself in the throat with the edge of her palm. Since I was 5 years old, I was forced to work in the garden. I so dreamed that in the city, I'll get a foothold, graduate from university, find a decent job, and now, she cried again. Oh, come on. He stopped her. Stop being so damp. There's no such thing as a hopeless situation. I'll see what I can do to help you. Come on, how can you help me? Wiping her tears with a paper napkin, Nora said sadly, I have nowhere to live anyway. It takes time to find a job. Even if a miracle happens and I get a job somewhere, when will I get a salary? On credit, no one will rent a room. I've only got 2 days to vacate the dormitory. You can stay with me temporarily. Unexpectedly for himself, Adam suggested it. Why? He hurried up, afraid that the girl would refuse. I live alone, in a 4-room apartment. I only come home to sleep. We cannot even meet. No. She shook her head, his new acquaintance. I can't. It's indecent. If you're afraid I'll make a pass at you. He smiled, noticing how the stranger blushed. I mean, you can be quite calm here. I don't throw myself at a girl if she doesn't want me to. Besides, all the bedrooms are locked from the inside with a key. Noticing the doubt in Nora's eyes, he made what he thought was the last and most convincing argument. I won't charge you for accommodation, but you'll cook and clean the apartment for me in return, and I'll think about a job. Is it a deal? You're very kind to me, but I don't take no for an answer. Adam said firmly. He glanced at his watch and hurried off. Listen, I don't have much time. Why don't I take you to the apartment, show you around, and give you the key? Do you have a lot of stuff? Not at all. Nora was embarrassed. Just a small suitcase and a bag. Will you move out of the dormitory by yourself? The girl nodded. That's fine. Let's go. He went back to the apartment, showed the room, gave the keys and left, leaving the new acquaintance at a loss. In the evening, Adam was waiting for a clean, tidy apartment and a sumptuous dinner. Oh, I wasn't wrong about you, cheerfully said the man, returning from work in the evening and looking at the set table with amazement. It looks appetizing. Where did you learn to cook like that? He took a bottle of wine from the bar, filled the glasses. It's all Mom's. Nora's eyes lit up with joy. She couldn't believe her luck, because in the morning she had thought she would have to go home, and now she had a single man, and a handsome one at that. She looked at him with interest, dark, slightly wavy hair, blue eyes, straight nose, lips, with a clearly defined line of lips on the stubborn chin dimple. Tall, athletic, on him perfectly sat strict expensive suit. Well, shall we drink to our casual acquaintance? He looked at the girl carefully, took a sip, put the glass on the table, and started eating. Emma. Closing his eyes with pleasure, he savored. How delicious. I suggest we have a drink for a browder cat? He stood up and walked over to Nora. She stood up too. Adam looked into her brown eyes and kissed her slowly, savoring the taste of her lips. He decided not to go too far so as not to scare the girl with his assertiveness. He returned to his seat, leaving her completely confused. So we've met. You wanted to think about a job for me. Coping with indignation, the girl spoke up. You, he reminded her. We agreed to tell each other you. I haven't decided what to offer you yet. Adam really had no idea what she could do at his firm, but he couldn't leave his new acquaintance in the lurch. He liked her. For now, I think, lets you keep an eye on the house, clean, wash, iron shirts for me, live here, and I'll give you some money for personal expenses. How's that sound? When your sabbatical is over, you can go back to school. I agree. Nora was delighted. The prospect of living with a rich and handsome man beckoned, and she didn't have to do much. The work was familiar. Secretly, she hoped to win Adam's heart. Her feminine instincts told her that he would not mind reciprocating. Since that day, Nora began to keep the house cozy, washing, ironing Adam's things, cooking him breakfast and dinner, and even packing lunch for work. Sincere care about him conquered the man. He could not resist and decided that this is the kind of wife he had always dreamed of. Beautiful, intelligent, and so homely. Nora combined all the qualities that had always attracted him. "Why don't you marry her if she's so wonderful?" asked Adam, his closest friend, as they relaxed in a bar after a week of work. "I guess you're right," the man replied thoughtfully. "It's time to make up my mind. I've had enough of being a bachelor. I have enough money to provide for my wife. I have achieved everything in life. It's time to think about an heir." My friend laughed. "Make up your mind before someone else steals her from under your nose." And Adam decided. One evening he came home with a huge bouquet of flowers. "Nora." "Unusually," he said solemnly. "I've only just met you, but I feel like you're the woman I'm ready to spend the rest of my life with. I am no longer 18 years old. I am ready to take responsibility for the family and consciously go to this step. Tell me, will you marry me?" Nora, who had not expected such a quick confession, became emotional. "Oh, Adam, I've never met a man like you before. And of course I will be your wife. I am so glad that I came to the cafe on that happy day and met you. You were sent to me by fate. Now I am not upset that I had to leave the university, because then I would never have met you." She confessed her feelings for him so sincerely that he did not doubt the rightness of her choice. The man put a gold ring on her finger. "Ah," Nora said admiringly, looking at the gift. "How beautiful is it?" "Thank you." She threw herself on her chosen one's neck and kissed him. In her heart, she rejoiced that everything was going so well in her life. "Maybe I seem old-fashioned, but let's not have a lavish wedding?" Adam suggested. "We'd rather go on a wedding trip abroad. Wherever you wish." "Yes, my love." Nora agreed to everything, as long as the fairy tale she had accidentally fallen into never ended. The wedding was celebrated modestly, with few friends and relatives. "Nora, why didn't your parents come to the wedding?" asked the girl mother-in-law. "I would really like to meet them. Adam told me that they are ordinary people, but that's great. I would say thank you to them for such a wonderful daughter." The daughter-in-law blushed with joy. "Adam was like a changed man. I've never seen him so happy. We have there a little family problems, which did not allow to be at the wedding." The girl answered evasively. She could not admit that she was ashamed to invite her village parents to a decent society. She knew that her father was bound to get drunk and worse, to cause a debauch, and they didn't have any decent clothes for such a celebration. But they would come someday, she promised discreetly. After the wedding, Nora felt as if she'd been replaced. First, she stopped cooking. "Honey?" Adam came home from work and once again found food from the restaurant on the table. "I missed home-cooked food." He reached up to kiss her. "I've been to enough restaurants." "Ah, honey, I didn't have time. Don't be angry." The woman pouted her lips resentfully, hugging him and deliberately harder unzipping her robe so he could admire her seductive breasts. I had to go to a beauty parlor. You want your wife to be beautiful, don't you? Or do you feel sorry for the money I spend on myself? You're already beautiful. The happy husband smiled condescendingly. And you know very well that I do not spare anything for you, but still I like to eat what you cook. He swooned in her arms and forgot about everything in the world. I looked for a beautiful pants. They fit me so well that the seller in the boutique advised me to order a photo shoot. You'll even give me money, won't you? Of course, darling. He took a card out of his jacket pocket and handed it to his wife. Here, designed especially for you. Use it without denying yourself anything, but still be prudent. You are just a miracle. The woman clapped her hands and kissed her husband tenderly. By the way, Adam remembered. There's a bill from the cleaning company. Do we use their services? Yes, I ordered them. Nora confessed. I'm sorry about the manicure I got recently. I don't want the skin on my hands to be wrinkled and saggy when I'm old. Why do you think I go to beauty salons, visit various spa procedures, all to look attractive? I even signed up for yoga. You've been working out, right? I'm still doing it. I don't want to turn into an old woman, so I'm keeping in shape. It's all for you. Those cleaning girls cleaned the apartment in half an hour, and I'd have to spend all day on it. Come here. Adam took his wife in his arms and carried her into the bedroom. You're the most beautiful. Do whatever you want, if you want. I have enough money for all your whims. He wanted to fulfill her every whim. I understand that you want to enjoy life until we have children, then you won't have time for that. I don't want to limit you in anything, but I think it's time to think about in hair. What do you think? Oh, darling, Nora whispered, pining for her husband's caresses. I'm so happy. I love you so much. You are so. Adam was at the pinnacle of bliss. He was not interested in other women. He was swimming in the sea of joy that his wife gave him. It seemed that nothing could overshadow their family prosperity, but as it usually happens, the fairy tale ended in a very unexpected way. Adam struggled to pull himself out of his memories. The apartment was dark. Only the not bright flame of the fireplace cast a shadow on the floor. The man stood up. We should pack Nora's things. He thought, I don't want anything to remind me of her. He made his way to the bedroom, opened the closet, and began putting expensive brand-name clothes into garbage bags. Wow, what's this? Adam retrieved a folder safely hidden underneath the dresses. He opened it and turned pale. That bitch decided to leak information to competitors about my most profitable deals. I wonder who she works for. Oh, and there's a cell phone. Let's see. An unfamiliar number, a message, wow. Adam was flipping through the notes and getting more and more furious, his face tense. And I wondered why lately all the lucrative contracts were falling through, and we had to settle for the small ones. She passed my every move to a nameless interlocutor, and judging by the dates, for a long time. It all makes sense now. Competitors knew what I want to offer, put forward more favorable terms, and not just tear down contracts. They used the developments of my firm. What a bitch! What was she missing? Pulled out of the province, did not spare anything, and she is not enough. Barely restraining himself, the man with anger threw the last dresses torn off the hanger into the bag, got dressed, picked up the bags and went outside, without thinking, loaded them into the car and took them to the trash. Like this, putting the bags next to the bins, said the man. Somebody will need these expensive clothes, and in my house, so that their spirit was not. Satisfied with rubbing his hands, Adam sat down behind the wheel. That's it, my dear wife. He said to his reflection in the rearview mirror, "Now it's just a matter of getting you out of my heart. It won't be easy, but I can do it." Back home, Adam put the file in his briefcase. "And I'll deal with you, strange gentleman, tomorrow. It's time to dot the I's and cross the T's. I'll turn the documents over to the police, have them file a fraud case. I'm not gonna let this go. If Nora gets caught, I won't help. Let her get what's coming to her." It's been a month. Adam gradually recovered from the breakup with his wife, filed for divorce, and focused on business. Things in the firm began to improve gradually, which could not help but be gratifying. "Adam?" The office door opened and Clara's secretary appeared. "There is a girl came to us for an interview for the position of a lawyer. Should I invite her in?" "Yes, call her in." Adam put aside his business and got ready to meet the next applicant. On the threshold appeared a pretty young woman. In her gray eyes read uncertainty and fear. "Well, it's understandable, because I don't know if I'll hire her or not." Adam thought, scrutinizing her from head to toe. Something about her appearance made him suspicious. The stranger submitted a resume. On her ring finger, the man noticed a ring very similar to the one he had given to his ex-wife. No way! Adam shook his head, shaking off the obsession. It wasn't exclusive, though. She could have bought one just like it. Is something wrong? The woman asked cautiously, noticing the businessman's strange reaction. "No." Coming out of his reverie, Adam said, "Everything is fine. You write that you used to work in your father's firm, but why are you working for me?" "My parents died." With restraint, the woman replied, "Your father also had a construction firm." "Yes, I'm familiar with the specifics of working in construction." Adam was surprised. "You even managed to win a few lawsuits. Commendable." "Well, I think we'll work well together, Kayla. Clara will help you with the paperwork, tell you everything. Come to work tomorrow. I'm a very strict boss, and I don't like tardiness, so keep that in mind." "That's it, you can go." Kayla was over the moon. Getting a job in a prestigious firm was incredibly difficult. She was warmly welcomed into the team. After a week, Adam realized that she was a good employee. He watched her with interest. During breaks, she did not look at the phone screen, but read something all the time. "Kayla?" One day, Adam approached her at the end of the working day. "I need to prepare a draft contract urgently. I'll send you all the data. It may take a long time, but I need to draw up the contract in a short period of time. Otherwise, the contract will leave us for another customer. How much time do I have?" "A day, 2 at the most. Can you stay after work if you need to?" "You won't be lost at home?" "Yes, I can stay late." Without answering any personal questions, the woman informed him. Adam was pleasantly surprised that she immediately agreed, did not object or demand for herself any additional conditions. 2 days later, he congratulated the team on the conclusion of a favorable contract, noting Kayla's excellent work. "We're doing the same thing." Kayla remarked, embarrassed by the attention of the employees who began to congratulate her. "Thank you for appreciating my work." Adam was enjoying talking to this soft-spoken woman who knew almost nothing about her. "Clara?" Notwithstanding his curiosity, one day the man asked, "Do you know if she is married?" "I don't know." The secretary shrugged. "She doesn't discuss her private life with anyone, but there's no stamp in her passport." "I checked. She lives in a rented apartment." "I see," Adam said thoughtfully. Some time later, Kayla had to stay late again. Drawing up the contract, Adam stayed with her because it was necessary to send the documents to the customer on the same day. That was it. Tossing the pen away, the man stood up, straightening his shoulders. "I have to take a break. I'm hungry and I want to order a pizza." "Do you like pizza?" he asked the woman. "I love pizza," she smiled back, "especially with mushrooms. If I had a cappuccino with cinnamon, I could sit here till morning." "Our tastes match," Adam remarked happily. He quickly ordered food delivery. "I noticed that you read during your breaks. What do you read, if it's no secret?" "Mostly legal literature, but at home I like to read historical books at bedtime. I wanted to be a scientist, but my dad insisted I become a lawyer. I had to hand over the reins to someone when the time came." "Do you like music?" Adam decided not to go into questions about his personal life, fearing to break the fragile thread of a trusting conversation, but to transfer the conversation to a neutral course. "I listen every day, morning and evening." Kayla happily picked up the familiar theme, especially the classics. The pizza arrived. They took a quick bite and plunged back into their work. No important details were to be missed. Adam noticed that he felt relaxed and at ease around this woman. From time to time, he threw an interested glance at her, but she did not notice it. She worked with concentration. She wasn't trying to capture his attention or impress him. It seemed to him that Kayla simply didn't notice how he felt about her, and he didn't even fully understand what was happening to him. I promised myself. At midnight, sitting at home by the fireplace, talking to myself, that no woman would ever enter my heart again. I guess I miscalculated. I like Kayla. I like looking at her, listening to her voice, seeing her work. What to do with all that? How do I know how she feels about me? We should ask her out to a restaurant. Adam decided and, inspired by the idea, went to bed. The next day, he asked Clara to call Kayla. "What are you doing tonight?" From the doorstep, the man puzzled his subordinate. "Nothing much." Kayla was confused. "Great," Adam rejoiced. "Then I invite you to the restaurant. There will be live music. Do you think it's convenient?" The woman hesitated. "You are my superior. I am a subordinate. That's why I won't punish you for office romance." Adam laughed, and Kayla blushed. "So how? Do you agree to spend the evening with me?" "Yes," she answered quietly. The evening turned out to be wonderful. They enjoyed each other's company, discussed new literature, argued about modern music, and listened to live sound. "Kayla, can I invite you to the dance floor?" Adam stood up, extended his hand. Kayla did not refuse. They moved to the beat of the music. Adam inhaling the scent of her toilet water, he was pleased to hold her warm hand. She looked completely defenseless. He wanted to shield her from any worries. Adam walked Kayla home. She hadn't invited him over, and he hadn't asked, realizing she needed time. He himself didn't have a good idea of what this woman meant in his life, did he? They started seeing each other after work, and almost every day spent time together. Oh my God, he pondered, sitting in a chair by the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket. I think I love this woman. I'm as ready as a boy to get a star from the sky for her, and I can't help it. I can't keep silent any longer. I want to know how she feels about me. What am I waiting for? He reasoned with himself. I'm not at the age to hide my feelings for long. It's time to admit to myself that I want to marry her. And if she refuses? The man hesitated. Then I'll just shut it down, but I won't forgive myself if my indecision plays havoc with me and Kayla falls in love with someone else. A woman needs clarity. The very next day, Adam bought the ring. For some reason, he decided it would be romantic to take her out for a weekend of skiing. After renting a hotel room, the man went to talk to Kayla. I don't want to seem too intrusive in your eyes, but do you want me to invite you to the ski lodge this weekend? He laughed when he saw the confusion in Kayla's eyes. Of course, I should have asked you if you like skiing before I booked your hotel room. I love skiing. The woman replied. It was just too sudden an offer. Adam could hardly wait for the weekend. The weather was perfect. A light frost pinched their cheeks, but the young people didn't notice it. They were happy to be together. They met at a restaurant after a long ride. Thank you for bringing me here. Kayla, blushing in the fresh air, looked like a mischievous girl, her eyes shining, and a smile on her pretty face. Adam marveled at her. Kayla? He was worried, not sure how to start the conversation. Damn it, I've completely forgotten how to compliment women. The man was silent for a moment, searching for words. Then he suddenly blurted out, Kayla, marry me. He took a ring out of his pocket, took his girlfriend's hand, and put it on her finger. I don't know how you will feel about my proposal, but I can't keep quiet any longer. All the days and nights I think only of you. I once swore to myself that no other woman would ever touch my heart again. I had a difficult divorce. He suddenly found Kayla crying, trying to quickly express everything Adam thought, not noticing the state the woman was in. What's wrong with you? Did I hurt you? He asked worriedly. It's not you. Kayla shook her head. It's about me. I can't accept your offer. But why? Adam shouted so loudly that the customers at the neighboring tables started to look around. You don't like me? If you refuse me, I understand. I have the most serious, pure intentions. I will not do anything bad to you. I am not at all what you think I am. I have nothing behind my soul. It is unlikely that your neighborhood will like a woman who until recently was picking up trash and lived in a construction worker's trailer, hiding from the police. Kayla was afraid to look at Adam, afraid to read the contempt in his eyes, but she couldn't stay silent any longer. She liked him, so she didn't want to mislead him. I'm a beggar. Everything I'm wearing I found in a dumpster. Some man left garbage bags of women's clothes and jewelry. I sold some of the jewelry, and the proceeds helped me get my life back on track. If I met a man who made me feel like a woman again, I would kiss him. This stranger saved me from certain doom. Kayla forced herself to look up at Adam and saw that he was smiling. She looked at him in amazement, not realizing what was going on. I was wondering where you got my ex-wife's ring. I was not crazy when I saw it on you, and this dress I bought for her in Milan. Now everything is back to normal. You can kiss your savior. The man laughed. He is in front of you. How? Kayla gasped. It can't be. Yes, it can. I guessed long ago that you were the owner of my ex-wife's things, but I didn't ask, though I was dying of curiosity. You know what? Adam raised his glass. I propose to drink. I really want to know how you ended up on the street, but even more I want to hear the answer to my proposal. Before we do that, let's switch to you, shall we? I have the right to demand it, you'll agree. He smiled again. In the dim light of the restaurant, Kayla looked even more charming than usual. Embarrassed by her confession, she expected Adam to immediately get up and leave for good. Instead, the man, as if nothing had happened, continued the interrupted conversation. The woman didn't know how to behave. Kayla, will you marry me? After all you've heard about me, are you still proposing marriage? Of course I am. I've learned to be a good judge of character. I know you're the kind of person I'd like to spend the rest of my days with. I don't care if you're rich or poor. I love you just the way you are. As for money, I have plenty. What do you say? Adam looked at Kayla expectantly. I agree, she whispered. Thank you. The man rejoiced, grabbed her hand, kissed it. He looked into the gray eyes of his chosen one and saw in them an answering fire of desire, felt that their heart beat in unison. I was afraid you would refuse me. After my wife cheated on me, I stopped trusting women, but you're different. That day, throwing my past into the trash, I didn't even realize that my heartfelt impulse would save someone's life. You must have secretly laughed at me when you first found me wearing my wife's clothes. No, were you? Adam exclaimed fervently. I had no intention of laughing at you. On the contrary, I saw it as a sign of fate. Who knows if we would have met under different circumstances? He was quiet. I know it's hard for you to talk about this, but I want to know how it happened that you lost your father's business. Was he a rich man? Yes. Kayla, saddened, the memories she had been trying to forget for so long came flooding back, tears showing in her eyes. I've upset you, I'm sorry. Adam looked anxiously at the woman. He squeezed her hands, trying to be supportive. If it's hard for you, don't say anything. No. Kayla brushed away the traitorous tears. I need to talk about this. I've been alone for so long, I can't believe anyone is interested in my story. You're right, my father was rich. We'd had a house, a well-established business. It all came crashing down when my parents died in a car accident. My husband took advantage of my weakness and took everything. He threw me out on the street, left me with nothing but my pajamas. That's how I was faced with the choice of either dying or forgetting my pride and wearing other people's clothes to survive. Bastard? Adam threw. A deafening rage rose in him at the stranger. Could nothing have been done? Maybe there could be. Kayla grinned. But who would listen to the ramblings of a homeless woman? I didn't even have a passport. He'd bought the front men, thought of everything in detail. I couldn't deal with him and prove fraud because I'd given him the right to run the business. So I decided to get a good job, eventually open my own firm, and ruin his business. I must avenge his betrayal. He betrayed not even my gullibility, but the memory of my parents, and for that there is no forgiveness. And you know, Adam said thoughtfully, we have both experienced betrayal of people we love. My wife cheated on me with another man, whom I considered almost a relative, but I'm not going to take revenge on the cheater. She's already punished. But I will help you to restore justice, but it will be tomorrow. He looked slyly at the woman. Right now, I can't wait to be alone with you. They returned to the room. This night was the first, the most unforgettable and romantic. Adam had pre-ordered champagne, fruit, and flowers. Everything was already ready for their arrival. Even the candles were burning. Thank you. Kayla whispered in her lover's ear, snuggling into his arms. I didn't expect to be happy ever again. I didn't expect fate to give me such a royal gift either. Gently kissing her, Adam said, I can't wait any longer. I have been dreaming about you since the very first time we met. Let's not waste a minute. I want to hold you in my arms and not let you go anywhere. That night was the beginning of their new life. They returned to the city completely different. Stopping the car in front of Kayla's house, Adam said, I don't want to break up with you. Why don't you move in with me? I will. I just need to pack. Are you waiting for me? Just take the papers and the essentials. I won't let you wear my ex-wife's clothes anymore. It reminds me too much of her. I'd love to update your closet. The woman smiled and kissed him in gratitude. I'll be back soon. She promised and disappeared through the doorway. On Monday, they came to work as if nothing had happened, but the employees immediately noticed the change. Everyone was curious, but no one dared to gossip. Adam himself gathered the team in the conference room and announced, Friends, I have some important news to share with you. Kayla and I have decided to get married. Everyone present laughed, applauded, rushed to congratulate the young people. I'm so happy for Adam. Vigorously shaking Kayla's hand, Clara. We were afraid that after breaking up with his wife, he would do something to himself, very worried about her cheating. You are nothing like Nora. I'm sure you will be happy. Kayla, I didn't expect such a supportive, sympathetic, hugging girl. She still didn't believe that all the troubles were over. Adam invited everyone to the table. Immediately champagne appeared from somewhere, a light appetizer. When is your wedding? Someone asked. The wedding is already scheduled. We decided not to make it a lavish celebration. We will celebrate modestly. Friends, eat, drink, but don't forget about work. I'll leave you to it. He approached his fiancée. Darling, I have to go. I have some matters to attend to. I'll be right there. He kissed her on the cheek and left. Alone in his office, Adam called the head of security. Michael, I have a favor to ask of you. I need you to dig up some material on this man. He handed the man a photo of Kayla's ex-husband and a folder of documents. Find out everything you can about how he managed to take his wife's property without her consent. Then turn him in to the police? No, I'll get the files first, and then we'll figure out what to do with him. Try not to take too long to decide. A few days later, the head of security came to Adam with a report, and the man is not bad to make a profit at the expense of his wife, but he did not expect that he would have to deal with real investigators. Thought he intimidated the woman, and that was the end of it. If she'd wanted to, she'd have had him out in no time. She couldn't. He left her without a passport. Bastard. Michael remarked harshly. He gave the chief all the documents. I ordered an examination of the authenticity of the signature on the divorce papers. Forgery. Found the will Kayla's father left behind. The documents she signed were pretty slick, but we found clues there too. It's all recoverable with a good lawyer. Are we going to go to trial? No. Adam's pleading. We'll deal with him ourselves. We'll go to his place first, but we'll have to get the papers in Kayla's name. The next day they went to Gary's house, having made an appointment. The unsuspecting man opened the door. He was wearing a homemade suit that looked like pajamas. Adam strode through the house in his masterly manner. What did you want to discuss with me? Is it about business? Gary asked. Yes, business and this house. What does that mean? I'm not selling the house. I'm not going to buy it from you. With a conspiratorial wink, the unexpected guest smiled, making the homeowner uncomfortable. Explain what you want from me. I thought you had a business proposition. Yes, that's right. Adam, without waiting for an invitation, sat down on the sofa in the living room and put the documents on the table. I want you to take a look at this. He nonchalantly pushed the papers towards the confused man. What are these? Gary ran his eyes over one sheet, then another. The men watched as his expression gradually changed. What? What do you want from me? Nothing in particular. Adam answered calmly. I want you to sign these documents immediately and leave the house. You can't do this to me, shrieked a frightened Gary. I'm sure Kayla said those same words to you, but you showed her no pity and just threw her out on the street. I have decided to be merciful purely out of respect for my future wife. I'm offering you the choice of street or jail? And who is your future wife? Shivering with fear of the inevitability of punishment, the man asked. Kayla, your ex-wife whom you betrayed. Enough with the lyrics. Adam stood up resolutely from the couch, holding out a pen to Gary. Sign it or I'll call the police. But you'll give me time to pack, won't you? The hands of a man who had recently been confident in his impunity were shaking. He could not manage the pen, finally signed and handed the documents to Adam. No, he answered firmly. You will leave this house immediately, and neither I nor my wife will ever hear from you again." But Gary tried to object, belittlingly, looking at the man. Immediately, Michael moved at him, and he moved fearfully toward the exit. "You think you're going to get away with this? You don't know what I'm capable of and what connections I have." He shook his fist threateningly, the former owner of the house. "I don't think anyone will want to do business with you." Adam laughed. "All your partners know how you got into business." "Well, that's it." Rubbing his hands together contentedly, the man said as the front door slammed shut. Vengeance had come upon the traitor. Kayla was avenged. He didn't tell the details of the exposure to the bride. He handed over the documents right at the wedding. The woman rejoiced at the unexpected gift, but after a little thought, said with sadness in her voice, "I don't want to live in a house where my ex-husband ruled." Adam gladly fulfilled the wish of his beloved wife and organized the sale of the house. After the wedding, the young couple went on a vacation, which they were looking forward to. They wanted to be alone and rest from all the vicissitudes. Soon it turned out that Kayla is expecting her first child. Then the happy husband announced that he would build the house of his dreams, where they will finally find peace and family happiness.
Subscribe and click the bell.
The loneliness of being alone together. That's what people often say about marriages that don't work out. Our union with Andrew was a little different. He was much older than me and married late. What surprised everyone around him? Because he was remarkably good-looking. I noticed it many times later. When we appeared together in a crowded place, women often turned to look at Andrew. Where else would you meet a man who looks exactly like the macho man on the cover of a book? Why did he marry me? I couldn't even explain it to myself. The mirror never flattered me. Not to the point where I thought I made a decent match for Andrew. Besides, a hard life doesn't make anyone pretty. And I've had a very hard life since I was a young girl. I was orphaned very young. In the car accident that killed my parents, I was the only survivor. I avoided the orphanage. My aunt took custody of me. She moved in with me and took care of me diligently all the years until I came of age. There was never any intimacy between us, but I can't reproach her for neglecting her duties. I was always fed, cleanly dressed. I had everything I needed for my studies. My aunt made sure I did my homework. She went to parent-teacher conferences and bought me birthday presents. And when I turned 18, I got a surprise. It turns out that my aunt was saving money, a pension, which I was getting from my parents. "Doria, I want to have a serious talk with you," she said. "Let's use this money to buy you a nice room, and you'll sign over the apartment to me." After all, it's such hard work taking care of someone else's child for years. And I got a penny from the state for it. If I was a little more experienced, I'd ask. As they say, you can guess where I would have sent the aunt in response to such a proposal. But at 18, I was still a child and obediently signed all the necessary documents. A room. My aunt really picked a nice one for me. In a 2-room apartment, the neighbors are a decent family, a mother with an adult daughter. We established a good relationship right away. My room was bigger than theirs. Spacious, bright, with a neighbor's balcony. When they did the laundry, they asked permission to hang the laundry there. And in return, they regularly treated me to all sorts of goodies, from homemade pies to homemade cake. A year later in the spring, walking in the park, I met Andrew. There was some sort of outdoor dance, and he asked me to slow dance. I was just passing by and had no intention of joining the dancing couples, but it was impossible to refuse Andrew. He courted me so gallantly and proposed so quickly that before I knew it, I was married. Andrew insisted that we sell my room and his apartment and buy a new place. A nice steel one in the center of town. We put the apartment in Andrew's name. He said it would make the paperwork easier. I was not at all sophisticated in these matters and just trusted him. Our difficulties started soon after the wedding. It was very modest, a few girlfriends on my side, and one single friend on my husband's side. About his parents, Andrew said that they lived far away and there was no need for them to travel across the country to sit in a restaurant. So there was no one to tell me about the man I married. As it turned out, Andrew was passionate about children. It was his thing. Before, I thought that all those ladies' novels about cool bosses going crazy with excitement at the thought of having an heir, all those novels were nonsense. But it turns out Andrew would do anything to have a son. It's hard to convey his disappointment when he found out I'd failed to get pregnant in the first few months of marriage. He insisted that I quit my job and get treatment. By that time, I had already finished my courses and was working in a flower store. I liked the job very much, and I didn't want to leave it. But I did it for my husband's sake. After a thorough examination in a private medical center, it turned out that I didn't need any treatment. There was nothing wrong. And then I found out that my husband in the past suffered from a severe form of drug addiction, passed a very serious rehabilitation, and the problem of our inactivity undoubtedly in him. For several weeks, he didn't speak to me. Again, had I been more experienced and more confident, maybe I would have taken a very different tone with my husband. But he became for me the second person after my aunt, who had some responsibility for me and who cared about my fate. At night, I cried quietly, asking myself how long it would last and how it would end. And the end of it all was that crazy evening when Andrew came home out of the blue with a man I had seen in person at the wedding. I knew he was Andrew's buddy. His name is Kevin, and he's like a doctor. Now I see it in a different light. He probably treated my husband when he was on drugs. I set the table, emptied the refrigerator almost completely, and ate. When I saw the amount of alcohol, some kind of holiday, something to celebrate, I asked. In its own way, muttered my husband. I had never drunk strong drinks before that evening. All my acquaintance with alcohol was limited to champagne and occasionally a couple of glasses of semi-sweet wine. Andrew did the sleath thing. If he'd given me cognac, I would have killed and refused. But he made a cocktail, orange juice, ice. In short, I didn't even realize I was drunk for the first time in my life. But the men were pretty drunk too. That's when Andrew dragged me into the bedroom, saying, "Maybe you'll get a kick out of it." And a minute later, he sent Kevin in there. I did not remember the night well, but I remembered the deadly resentment I felt towards my husband, the desire to take revenge on him, and the drunkenness, feeling a sense of permissiveness. I woke up late with a heavy head and realized that I was home all alone. The men had already left. Andrew and I didn't speak for a few more days, steeled by remorse. I decided to pretend that everything that had happened simply hadn't happened. After all, almost everyone has some crazy things happen in their lives. And then Kevin called me. To say that my cheeks swelled would be an understatement, although the call was strictly business. "Daria, you're not working right now, are you?" he asked, after what we had. He also spoke in first name, so, as I decided to pretend it never happened. "I don't know if your husband told you. I'm the head physician at a private nursing home, and we're in dire need of staff. The job is simple, taking care of old people. The pay is good. It would seem that there should be enough applicants. But we have to turn down a lot of applicants. People come in who are irresponsible, drunk. Today they're out, and tomorrow I can't count on them. It would seem impossible for my cheeks to burn hotter. But it happened. Would you like to try it?" asked Kevin. With great joy, I answered. The first time I was so nervous that I poured myself half a shot of valerian before work. And then to repel the smell, I used poison mint gum. In our nursing home, there are 2 floors. On the first floor are placed the fastest old people. They walk either on their own or with a stick or even with skates, but they walk. And for this, we love them sincerely. The old people live 2 by 2 in each ward. They have a toilet and a shower, and they go to the canteen themselves. Of course, not everything is so smooth. There are some nasty grandparents, like Wendy, for example, who will always be unhappy. Cleaning is a problem for her. One minute she's sleepy and my cleaning is in the way. "Turn off the vacuum cleaner," she shouts pitifully. She won't let me open the window. Even in the heat of summer, she is drafty and cold. The food in the canteen is unpalatable. No entertainment. She perceives any visitor as a person who is ready to listen to her endless complaints about life. The only person who could put her in her place is our doctor, Kevin. She realizes that her life depends on him to some extent, and she listens to him as God. She'd be willing to complain to him about her illnesses nonstop. It's a shot here and a sting there. In short, my paws are aching and my tail is falling off. But Kevin stopped that from the start. The more you talk about illnesses, the more you prepare the ground for them to develop. Depression starts to set in, which undermines the body. And in that case, you can die simply from a runny nose. Right now, there are two people against your illnesses, you and me. But if you take their side and force me to fight them alone, well, then he spread his hands, Wendy often nodded, looking at him obsequiously in the eyes. And to strengthen your body, I prescribe you to drink a shot every day like a mountain and snack on a sandwich with red caviar. Kevin knew that this patient had the means to eat Roman apples. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ordered such a thing. The family would have paid more if Wendy hadn't sent them a homely atmosphere. I was the one who didn't come in right away. But then, after talking to another nurse, Vanessa, experienced caregiver, came to the same conclusion, where Vanessa only did not work and in public hospitals, and at home for the sick cared for. And she said to me, "Sure, it's nice here. Everything is clean, beautiful, comfortable, like in a sanatorium. But on the other hand, these old people feed us. We're in their service. So no matter how they behave, we have to politely, with a smile, God forbid, raise our voice or tell the same tick in the eye who it is. It's easier in a regular hospital where you can yell." She thought about it and added, "If it hurt, of course. But Grandma Maria, we all just adore." And it would not have been fated to be an ordinary village grandmother. But her son made it big. Now he has his own big company. Grandma Maria, talking about her son, always says the words big, big, big boss. And his house is big, and his car is big, and his dacha is huge. Purely rural house of culture asked Grandma Maria not to live in his village house. Why cockroaches, at least in winter, daughter-in-law did not allow. Her daughter-in-law doesn't like her, though, and tried to behave Grandma Maria quieter than water below the grass. But still some orders daughter-in-law violated. There were too many to remember. Her son persuaded her to move here to the village. And in winter, you can't even drive on those roads. And you mom will be well fed, and a doctor nearby, and women of the same age. You'll have someone to talk to. And I'll come often. He really did come. Brought his mother what she always called hotels all in a row, and a beautiful French robe in front of you. She immediately put it away in her closet, in her coffin bag. Repeated that in the coffin will lie beautiful as a bride in this luxury and overseas fruit, which Grandma Maria has never tried and taste. She was afraid only green. Maybe not ripe, and a huge box of chocolates. She herself wanted something simpler. I've often observed that old people return to their childhood dreams and want to fulfill them. And I myself heard her asking her son Jack, "Don't buy me expensive things. Bring me something embarrassing to say. Bring me a can of green peas and a can of runny milk." I dreamed as a girl that someday I'd open a can and eat it all with a big spoon. Our family, remember, was always limited. You share with your brothers and sisters. What's in it for you? 2 peas and a drop of that condensed milk. Grandma Maria lived without a roommate. Her son had paid for a separate room for her, and her room was like a hospital room or even a sanatorium ward. What about in a hut? In the corner with a small lamp, Grandma Maria understood all her responsibility for carelessness with fire. Yes, in their village with wooden houses, everyone was terribly afraid of fire. And she only lit the light bulb on Easter or Christmas Eve for an hour. While she sang the word of prayer, she had her own TV set too. No need to go to the common living room. But Grandma Maria didn't like TV. She was always angry that they were broadcasting scary extra programs. All apologized while listening, but the radio was much better. She left her favorite Kalina Red channel, on which one after another transmitted songs, took out a plastic box. Back in the year 70s, when white, now yellow absorbent cotton put on big glasses with thick panes and delved into needlework. How much higher than that? And there was more than a few things tied up in her room. That was what gave it a resemblance to the village. for it was covered with once-sown cornflowers and poppies, bound with science. Dushkin pillows embroidered and crocheted, curtains, towels, tablecloths, napkins. The room was blooming. Grandma Maria did not forget us either. I had a blue shawl as a keepsake, tied by her hands. Vanessa had everything, including Lucy the dishwasher. Grandma Maria had a memento of some kind. And for Kevin, she knitted a beautifully knitted reindeer sweater and convinced him that he could sleep in the snow like that. If we had any committees, Nina, the headmistress, would try to get the guests into the room. Grandma Maria, and here we have a real museum of Russian culture, she said. The guests were amazed. And there were some good grandfathers, too. We had Chuck and William. The first one also came from the village. I went through the war, and not like now. A lot of people call themselves veterans, but they barely smelled gunpowder themselves. No, he was a machine gunner. Women usually live longer. They don't. Chuck buried his wife and daughter. That's not wasted. There's a hug left in him. Which one of us kids never complained about anything? He was happy with everything. The most upsetting thing was that he was rapidly losing his eyesight, almost couldn't read. But he always came. Whatever evenings we organized in the living room, even children from the kindergarten would come to perform poems and dances in front of the old people. A local poet would drop by to read poetry. Someone who lives here will come in to read a book aloud. Chuck, in the first rows of listeners, will be his neighbor William. Though he resembled him in appearance, also light, thin, also saw everything worse. But from Chuck differed a very intelligent man who studied to be an engineer with a red diploma. He got his main education in the camps. During the years of repressions, he could tell very interesting, and for hours about those with whom he sat in prisons, met in exile. He slept side by side on the camp bunks. But the same cruel life accustomed him to trust no one. And his family didn't work out. He also very much wanted to stay in this world, to live a little longer. And he was always afraid that he was about to die. Any pain in his heart he perceived as a precursor of a heart attack in his head, as a precursor of a stroke. Then it seemed to him that his heart stopped. Then his hands possessed several times a day. He was getting on the scale. Wasn't he losing weight? Wasn't gnawing. Was there a secretly evil tumor in him? Kevin used to check in on him several times a day, just to reassure him. Worse, if a panic attack hit our old man. Ambulances weren't very willing to come to our house at night. Sometimes she was delayed for an hour or two, and we called her often. After all, the second floor was filled with our lying old people. We had more of them. Many relatives were simply tormented, ready to pay any money, just to return to the former way of life, not to jump up to the patient at night, not to be tied to his regime. It really takes skill. At one time I thought I'd never make it. The patients are different. Some are light as a feather, some are heavy. Alas, they can't lift. Vanessa showed me how to lift such an old man, to wash him, to change his underwear. And there are so many little things. To take care of one at home can make your head spin. And if you have a dozen of them, and how many of them need to be spoon-fed? It's not quick. The second thing is to persuade them that everything is tasty, that they need to eat. Vanessa said that when she worked in a regular hospital, there were 50 people per hospital. So another nurse would just put a plate on the patient's chest and go, and do as you wish with a spoon, like a dog. There are many more such old people here cared for. And the face in a complex combination. A smile and a clutch of teeth. Almost all grandparents from well-to-do families. But the strength is simply not left to their loved ones. Here Helen, if we did not have it, her daughter, would have to part with her husband to 1,000 gimmicks at the old lady. I do many manipulations just on automatic to put on a gray, similar kerchief, fluff, chick rings, open the window, and immediately correct any curtain so that you do not feel a draft. Daria, I need to cut my nails today and my feet are good too. And with the sulfur, they're all cold and lifeless. So at least blood will be shed from the bleachers to grease my nails and feet. Massage with cream. I start gently, rubbing. Old people's bodies are fragile, so it doesn't hurt. It won't leave a bruise. I can't feel it. Helen is angry. Daria is stronger. When the massage ends, it turns out that the tea is already quite cold, and it is necessary to hurry to the kitchen for a new portion of porridge. Helen, with a shudder, refuses it with unleavened food. Nauseated, she asks for a sandwich. As always, I linger longest in her room. But that's okay. There's only Grandma Miranda left. Well, I mean, she's still all touched up and doesn't realize where she is at all. Thinks she's on a train. Nina didn't even want to take her. Golden Autumn doesn't specialize in the mentally ill. But Miranda turned out to be an unusually quiet creature. And I feel sorry for her son, or rather, the whole family. They don't have much money. Both husband and wife work. And Miranda is afraid to leave home. She thinks she's on a train. The decision was made when Miranda, in the absence of home, climbed through the window on the 3rd floor, explaining the noise to passers-by. The full conductor locked the compartment. And now it's my station to go to. One of the strange men managed to run into the entrance, kicked the door to the apartment with his shoulder. Luckily, it wasn't iron. Dragged my grandmother back in. What else could she have done with my aunt's words? I don't know. She closes the bathroom door behind her and can't open it. She starts screaming and calling for help. Then she goes out into the stairwell and asks every cross-dresser she meets, "Is the train coming soon or is she late?" Pity. Loved ones risked it. Took it. And so far nothing extraordinary has happened. True, Miranda drinks tea only from a glass with a subcup. And my daughter needs to get a firm grip on the handle. Or as the carriage shakes, as grandmother pours steep boiling water from the hospital to go and go. Well, you can put up with that. And when Miranda asks where we're going now and if the end of the road is coming soon, she's always content to say, "You remember, don't you, Miranda? It's a big country, so we've got a long way to go." Kevin prescribed her some pills, after which Miranda decided to fit more into life and take advantage of all the outings. And in the keys to me and my daughter. Road radio. And then you and I will go to the restaurant in the car. Anyway, just as he prescribed the pills, he canceled them. As soon as I served all my pets and was about to go already to the dining room to drink tea with pies. What pies with apples and cinnamon gave today for breakfast? The smell made me dizzy. I was anticipating drinking tea like a second orderly. Vanessa opened Miranda's door and shouted at me Daria and us called downstairs. "We'll be meeting the new grandmother." "New B, why both of us?" "Oh, wait, the one for whom the suite is for." Vanessa nodded. Our boarding house took over a building that used to belong to a daycare center. And the big playroom on the 1st floor, with its south-facing windows, has been turned into a suite. The suite was empty most of the time. It was too expensive for mere mortals to afford. And the suite was, of course, a single room. "I can imagine," Vanessa whispered. "And the ass and dough will probably have to be wiped with fluff." She bored us. Down we went, wary and interested extremely. We didn't have to wait long. A quarter of an hour, maybe, a car pulled up. A nice color. Better not ask the make. I can tell the difference between a car and a bus at best. I've never owned a car. A young man got out, opened the back door, and offered his hand to the woman, looking at the companion he was leading down the driveway. Vanessa and I soaped the granny. Her tongue didn't turn to call her that. Small in stature, graceful, gray-haired in a light-colored cloak. She walked lightly, and her shoes had heels too. I think I underestimated the scale. Vanessa stretched out. She's not just torturing us, she's outliving us. I looked at Vanessa. She is big, formidable Bagley. I couldn't even find a robe in the right size for her, and Vanessa is wearing a colored robe, increasing her resemblance to an Asian woman. She has black hair knotted at the back of her head, thick black eyebrows. It's a good thing we're on a shift together. Vanessa can be summoned without a problem. To help lift the heaviest patients. She helps them out like bears. On the other shift, there are 2 nurses of about the same build, both elderly. It's harder for them, if anything. Vanessa came to us through an ad posted in the church. She's very religious, and when she enters the rooms where the old ladies have icons, she crosses herself. Vanessa likes almost everything, except the most harmful, but even those trust her more than me, for example, or the girls from the other shift. Can't imagine the mighty Vanessa dropping anyone. Oh, how did we get the groupies away from her? It was our shift change. The night nurse came in on her night shift. Vanessa and I had just gone downstairs to get dressed. Some light jumps up the stairs and shouts in a proper voice that her grandmother is dead. Nina didn't even give her a hard time afterwards. But then we were really confused. What to do? Vanessa just kept her cool. I called Nina and Kevin. Did they leave already? Called for a special car. That's when it all started. There's this dead guy and a driver no better. They took one look at the dead man and said, "Carry him downstairs." Carry the man down, dear us. What are we to you? Who are we to you? How can we carry her? How can we lift her? It turns out that one man is post-op. The other is just shaking his head, saying, "I can't lift it." It's worse than dragging the grand piano up 16 floors without an elevator. Vanessa spits on her palms and says, "But we'll all do it." And right there on the blanket, a man is dragging by one end and pulling by the other. We grab. Vanessa's panting. That's how we carried the body down. I remember that blizzard, flakes of snow in the face, the subway, slippery, icy paths, which for some reason we fell on every now and then. It was a shorter song. The next day, we found out that the relatives were big fans of a newspaper like HEA. They demanded a pathologist. In vain, Kevin assured them he could write their aunt's diagnosis with his eyes closed. Where was it? Or maybe she had died from not being treated. It was said with frothing at the mouth. Kevin just waved his hand. And this firm will probably have to hang a teaspoon and a half of sugar in cups with a silver spoon. Vanessa whispered doongly. No, you tell me, why did she come here? I shrugged. No relatives who sent their loved ones to the Golden Fall. I could understand. I couldn't understand her wanting to move in with us. She walked under the arm of her grandson so briskly that she looked more like a member of some high-ranking committee called to find out if everything was in order, if, for example, the fire extinguisher was in place, and whether the all-important paperwork was properly drawn up and signed. At the open door to the suite stood Nina herself as a doorman. Seeing us, she waved that you come over. Quickly, we obediently approached. The suite, naturally, shone with cleanliness. She was sitting in a chair under a palm tree, and a young man of very pleasant appearance stood beside her. Anna, across from your room is our living room. You can always sit there, talk to someone. We have very friendly residents, piano, record player, library, walks, activities twice a week. Dinner's coming up. If you want a special menu, maybe you could order food from the restaurant? We do have that option. We bring it in. To be honest, we brought a cake for Semyon Grigorievich's anniversary once, when he was 90 years old. Mole nodded her head, but with a kind of unmistakable dignity. It didn't even need to be emphasized, it lived in her. Anton, can you leave quietly? She turned to the young man. See, you're leaving me with nothing. No, absolutely not. In a hurry, Nina, our girls, Vanessa and Daria. Girls, come, at any time you can call. They will do everything you need and read, and take you for a walk. In general, they will do everything. Almost silently, Vanessa said, Will you also give me a bell? As soon as the madam calls, we'll be here at attention. What do you want? We have a lot of time to read books to everyone. I also supported her quietly with a corner of my mouth. Molai looked at us attentively, and equally attentive was the look of her companion. He had very beautiful brown eyes, and in general he resembled either Jewish or pre-revolutionary intellectuals. But it didn't matter to me what kind of eyes he had. Thank you. I don't need anything yet, I said. I'd like to stay with my grandson. To say goodbye. Of course. Nina nodded. Why don't one of the girls clean up and organize your things? Thank you, I told Molelai. She was still sitting there with her back straight as a string. We went out and Vanessa, who was bolder, hard to embarrass in general, immediately inquired, Why is she saying goodbye to him? Nina, he is leaving the other day, explained our main abroad in France long business trip. My grandmother has a heart condition, and he was afraid to leave her alone and hire a nurse. So there is not one to hire 2 or 3 at least. Sighed Nina. She wildly now in 3 good, responsible non-drinking and with professional skills. But if anything, until the ambulance will call, and until that will come. We're more reliable here, and the old lady asked for the deed. She doesn't look like an old lady, Vanessa said doubtfully. We did the usual things, washed the tents and corridors to a shine, cleaned the plumbing, served and took out the ship, fed the bedridden. But thoughts of the office kept up. I don't know about Vanessa, but I wondered how it was that she agreed to change her apartment, probably huge, well-maintained, but living with us. Why does she only have a grandson? Where are the children? Will she be too capricious? It's still unpleasant to be seen not as a human being, but as a low-level servant. The new girl refused to eat in the dining room and didn't ask me to bring her plates to her room. How did the grandson leave? We didn't see. But after lunch, the new lady was visited by Kevin. He stayed with her for quite a while and came out with a strange look on his face. Very often I've seen him close the door to a sick person as if he were closing a page. His expression changes immediately, and he hurries off to do other things. Sometimes comes out irritated. At times there is a sigh of relief. But from Mo'olelo he came out pensive. He started booing something light. Then he shook his head, laughed, and went on his way. He closed the door to his office carefully. We didn't visit the new girl until evening. Her room was cleaned. Molly is a walker, so our help was not needed. I stopped by to call her for dinner. My shift was ending. After dinner, Lucy, the night nurse, came on duty. When we heard my knock, yes, I quietly opened the door and peeked in. Molly was sitting in front of me and styling her hair. Her gray hair in a high wave. The overhead light was out. Only the table lamp on the table was lit and picture frames appeared on the nightstand. A shawl was thrown on the headboard, blue with long tassels. It was no longer a ward, but a room. Shall we eat in the dining room? I called, and after a short pause, I added, or shall I bring it to you here? Molly looked at me carefully. Daria suddenly turned to me, and I was surprised that she remembered my name so easily and spoke to me as if she had known me for a long time. You're busy tonight. All my surprise is gone at once, and it's beginning, I thought. Help me unpack, unpack, unpack. I'll read, like scratch my back. Well, I let Lucy do it, but Memolelli didn't let me think long about what duty she wanted me to do. Would you go to the movies with me, she asked. That's not what I expected. The last time I'd been to a movie a couple of years ago, our guests hadn't even thought about it. There was a nice plasma TV in the living room. Sometimes they fought over the programs. Some wanted to watch a movie, some wanted to watch the news, and some wanted to watch a soccer match. Molly had her own TV in her room. What about it? I was confused. They won't let you go, I guess. They can't, but this isn't a hospital. Molly grinned. I'm perfectly capable. It's different if you're expected at home. I can go alone, but the company's a different matter. I've never had small children. Andrew, I'll explain it all sometime, especially as time went on and we became more and more estranged, so the movie theaters are far away. I continue to be perplexed. I'm not even close. We'll call a cab, Molly said conspiratorially. What time did you get off? 8 o'clock. I couldn't get my act together. So we'll go to the last session. Come on, finish up. I'm waiting for you. God be with you. I don't need any help. When you're done, get dressed and come back for me. What movie do you want to see? Tula waved his hand. You know, I don't want to see a cheesy melodrama anyway, but anything will do. I'm just in the mood tonight. As a girl, when I was sad, I'd beg my mother for a few hryvnias and went to the movies. I'd be very grateful if you keep me company. Anna didn't let me down. When I went to her door at the beginning of the 9th, she answered me already dressed, in her light-colored cloak. Elegant hats, even gloves, were on her hands. It was a strange feeling to stand there, as if with a girlfriend, waiting for a cab to pick us up, to go to the movies, to let ourselves be entertained. I had the feeling that this had not happened in my life for 1,000 years. I didn't feel like I was accompanying an old lady at all. The residents of the nursing home. I know that Seva will be fine, Anna said. But it's still hard to part when he is going so far away. Of course, we will contact each other every day by email. We will, of course, email each other every day. Oh, Grandma again, I thought. So the laptop I saw on her desk is not a toy or a tribute to fashion at all. And your grandson? Where are his parents? Frank was raised by me, but my daughter died very young. Pneumonia in the hospital, and the doctors didn't save her. I didn't ask about Frank's father. More than half of my Russian girlfriends have children alone. The cab driver, a young guy, who arrived in a silver Priora, ran us to the lobby. In 10 minutes, Anna didn't need any help. A little upset, she jumped out of the car. And it was impossible to imagine that she would behave in a large shopping center as a grandmother, who God knows how long has not gone out. More like me. There were 2 ways to get up to the 4th floor, where there were cinemas and cafes, either by escalator or elevator. We headed for the glass elevator car. The elevator was made. So interesting that it looked like the cabin was going straight down into the fountain. Tourist-style metal, glass, and jets of water. We were going up to the 4th floor, and I noticed Anna's small hands in lacy black gloves. It seemed to me that as we walked out, she would take me under her arm confidently and lightly, like her companion. But it didn't take a cloud for her to read me. We were standing in front of the ticket office. Well, asked Anna what we were going to watch. Since the time is late, no children's sessions and fairy tales will obviously not be in their program. We'll have to choose between this and that. She nodded at 2 brightly colored posters. But please, no animation. I can't stand animation. It smelled like popcorn and warming butter. The clerk, though tired, looked at us curiously a couple times. The door to the small, cozy movie room was open. We picked out the odd movie. Liam Neeson, an almost gray-haired artist, played the owner of a funeral home. On his iron table was a girl in a red dress who had just been in a car accident before our eyes. The girl assured him she was alive. Liam Neeson convinced her that she had passed away and showed her the death certificate. It's just that her death was so sudden that to this day her soul is still sort of between 2 worlds. And he, the owner of the funeral home since childhood, is endowed with a mysterious gift to see such souls, to communicate with them. The mystery was that, and we viewers to the end could not understand whether the girl is alive, as it is undoubtedly believed she herself, or Liam Neeson is actually her killer, set up all this coincidence. Now the girl escapes from the funeral home. She's moving toward home for some reason. She appears and disappears like a ghost. And then she comes back, and she says, in a low voice, "I'm weaker." No wonder the undertaker answered her, "Your time is almost up. I love this artist. He's one of a kind." In any case, he embodies such images that it is not at all scary to walk next to him, holding his hand or holding his back and looking at life itself as a movie. No matter what happens, dangerous bad things will not affect you. Suddenly I didn't feel good. A bad or some strange anxiety came over me. "What's wrong with you and your anxiety?" asked Anna, looking into my face. The lights were on in the hall. "You're all sweaty." "Wait, I'll get some tissues." She unzipped her small purse, took out a pack of paper napkins and handed them to me. I tried to smile at her, but the smile came out crooked, and my fingers trembled. When I pulled out the napkin, "Oh, you were shaking. Let's go somewhere else," he said worriedly. "Let's sit down. I think there's a cafe nearby. Do you need something to drink? But don't worry, for God's sake. It's a small thing to me in the sense of money. There's something wrong with you. I can see that. Come with me." She was the one who kept me going when we went to the cafe. She chose a table in the corner and ordered. If I had been alone, I probably would have sighed at the price of each cup of coffee and chosen the cheapest. Anna ordered us ice cream. "You have glasses." It was sprinkled with chocolate and nuts over a high-priced cup of coffee and a glass of red wine. All this was placed in front of us by an obliging waiter. Very young, maybe a part-time student. He bowed slightly and disappeared. We were almost alone in the cafe, unless you counted the bartender behind the glass counter. There behind the walls was my favorite, the month wistful and endless. And here in the ghostly flicker of lights in the semi-darkness in the whispered voice of the singer in French, I could already feel the holiday. And after the new year, as we know, will come spring. Anna was picking up coffee grounds and foam with a spoon. "Do you want to tell me what happened? What's got you so worried?" I took a sip of wine. Red, sweet, fortified. I didn't know what would help me now. Anna looked at me and turned the conversation around. You're probably wondering why I'm here, aren't you? Well, I kind of wanted to. Imagine, I'm a girl from a military family used to move from city to city. I couldn't sit in one place for a long time, and then I had to choose the same job. First, I worked in a magazine with a camera, traveled all over the country. It was hard to get out of the country back then. Not only did you have to be politically above board, you had to have a chance. As they say, the stars aligned in the sky. But I'm very grateful to fate for that time. I've been where today's travelers are unlikely to go. They may have traveled around Europe and Asia, marveled at Easter Island. But here in this vast, undiscovered country, you can be Columbus the discoverer. And this is what the world looks like when the sun goes down. In the summer, I used to wander barefoot in the shallows by the sea on a dare. We didn't live long, but we lived in the deep taiga, like on an island. And what are the nature reserves worth? To get a good shot, I'd go where men wouldn't dare to go. I was jokingly called a mountain goat. I saw a crocodile a few meters away. Not in a zoo, but in the taiga. Everything that man can master from the cave city to the caves. It's also a whole world of wonder. There is a feeling of complete detachment from reality, as in space. And the scenery around is completely alien. When my Natasha was born, I had to stay at home. I still did not think that babies will be good in expeditions, intense by the fire. And then I started writing books. It fascinated me so much that I no longer regretted that my life had changed. After all, the journey to which our imagination sends us, they are not inferior to real ones. I saw a lot of things and I wanted to share them. And my heroes could have had much more heroic fates. What are their prototypes? My husband. You're going to ask about him too. We were a kind of tandem. He's a journalist for the same magazine. I'm a photographer. He didn't believe I could write at first. I'd only ever captioned photos before. We've been around each other too much. But what beauty is there when in the morning, climbing out of the tent, we are not yet honest? After 10 days of camping, after sitting by the fire, you have to have eyebrows as red as a grouse. You could say we sought each other in our underwear. And now I was back in front of him in my underwear when he left. A robe over a nightgown. Nancy clutched to his chest. And there's a young girl, an aspiring journalist he met in the newsroom. Of course, he found her much more seductive than me, whom he knew inside and out, so to speak. And then there was a period when I was getting on my feet in literary terms, writing my first things. I hadn't been published yet, and then the first stories began to appear in magazines. It's not a quick thing. As long as you write a manuscript, send it in, submit it, it gets accepted. That's if you're lucky. And they decide to put in such and such a number, such and such a number. Maybe in a few months or maybe next year. Anyway, I remember that scene so well. When Nancy arrived, it was already 15. So he hadn't seen her in years. It's like getting to know a stranger and yet knowing it's a stranger to you from the closest person in the world. Father and daughter in that new family, he had 2 sons. And here we are sitting in the kitchen. What was that scene? I already had a full-time job, of course, another literary magazine. I'm a member of the Writers' Club. I needed these crusts, actually, to collect materials for my next things. I didn't give up my camera. It used to serve as my eyes. But now I could see with my inner eye much more than what the optics could capture. And still the camera to the rescue. I didn't look so bad. When a person is passionate, he can be anything. But still this aura around him, this light, because in front of a person, as if a light is burning, he lives not like most people, as if a day-to-day. When as if a day-to-day just lives, he goes to the goal so beautiful for him. And now the flame of this goal seems to light the way not only for him, but also for others. What's beside him? Nancy Anna a little audibly, sighed half-heartedly. A small and so serious little man, such big eyes clear. It's not that she studied perfectly. She finished school with a medal, then geological, with a red diploma. It's just that at that time, she had her whole childhood with her. That's how children divide the world into good and bad, fair and square. Valor and meanness is a very strict judgment for us adults, without any compromise there. In this case, she ran her dry palm over the smooth surface of the wooden table. And there was no one to judge. Sitting in front of us is a Mushitanka like this. You may not believe it, but it was hard for me to even imagine that he was once my husband, has long been on paperwork correcting other people's manuscripts. He doesn't write, but sits down. I guess his young wife demanded this sedentary life. And Ben, what expeditions? Now they have to feed, secure loans, pay from paycheck to paycheck, to patch holes in the budget, and these small worries gnaw at him like mice. His face is already wrinkled, and as if he has not been happy or admired anything for 1,000 years. As it turned out, we had nothing to talk about. He awkwardly asked Nancy if she needed anything. And she said she didn't need anything. I mean, what can you ask of a man like that? It's like a donkey pulling a cart with heavy sacks, and you dump another sack on it. And then another. Yes, Nancy always settled for something small. She didn't care what kind of boots she wore, as long as they didn't leak. And her hair was like that. It's rare to see a braid as thick as her arm nowadays. But to tell you the truth, I didn't feel guilty about her directly, that I didn't give her anything in life. I was doing it all for her. She didn't need much, and I didn't need much. And the fact that she had listened to my stories since she was a child. She wanted to be a vagabond too. She was also drawn to the road. And then it seemed to me that she repeated my fate under some crazy copy of the expedition. Eyes wide open with delight. The harshest conditions didn't frighten her. And love again. Only this one turned out to be married. Tula ran her hand across the table again. Nancy arrived from her expedition, pregnant, and as in a bad movie, his daughter came to her, waved about 8 years old. Only a huge white blouse, she said, and her voice was ringing and trembling. Auntie, I want to ask you very much. Don't leave me and my mom or dad. We love him very much. I guess her mother taught her to do that. Well, Natalia remembered how she herself had done in life, how she grew up. I guess somewhere in her heart she wanted to have a daddy too. Well, she broke up with this man forever. She just closed the door in front of him and said it's none of his business what happens to her next. And it was bad, I guess, for me. It was my business. And for her he served as a light. And when that flame went out, Natasha and I became as if extinguished. She's so thin. And soon after she gave birth to a son from her first illness, she died. We used to be able to get pneumonia and recover. We get back on our feet. And then there's a big city and hospitals and IVs and professors. And I kept Nancy. I had to hold on so that no one would even think that my grandmother would not be able to raise a grandson. So I held on. I adopted a boy. It was possible to raise him so that he wouldn't know his mother at all. And his father even less. He had no memory of his own. But I used to tell him about Nancy and what she was like, and how she grew up, and where we went with her, and the funny things that happened to us. The kids love it. They ask me a lot. Tell me about when I was little, he asked me. Tell me how little mommy was. Thank God, he wasn't interested in geography, but in languages. He was fluent in French by high school. And I'm only for the special school tutor Foreign Language Institute. That's how he got into the institute, and my whole began to fall apart like a house of cards. Everything I was holding on to. And I began to make friends with doctors more and more often, especially after the heart attack. And now my grandson is a translator for a large company sending him to Paris for 6 months. He'll have to translate documents there. And he's like, I'll leave you, Mom. He calls me Mom too. It's just so unusual to call me Mom with a name. What if at night you don't have the strength to call an ambulance? I convince him that I'm going to write a new book. It's better than any pills. As long as I'm writing it, I'm holding on. I've checked. And he can't leave if I don't feel good about you. I'd rather not. That's when I came up with this boarding house. I don't need much. It's a private room. Only because I need to be alone when I'm writing. Otherwise, I'm always in public. If there's anything I need help with, I guess. When my grandson comes home, of course I'll come home. Your ice cream glasses have long since been emptied. The coffee was drunk. Anna ordered another glass of wine. Starting a conversation is always difficult. At least for me. I'm always the one who gets the first sentence. It comes out so clever. It's hard to even understand what I'm trying to say. But this time, I guess I can't look as far ahead as you do. I said, not looking at Anna and twirling the spoon in my hands. I know it's silly, I guess. But I think my family life is going down the drain. I told you everything. There were no secrets to hide. Anna reached out her hand as if she wanted to cover my hand with her palm, but at the last moment she changed her mind. And that's good, because I don't like to be reached. Anna drummed her fingers on the table. And you intend to forgive all this? She asked. Or do you only blame yourself? I shook my head. I have a strange feeling. I just can't think about the future. You're right, Anna said thoughtfully. And your doubts don't seem delusional to me. Let's think about it. Maybe you should go away and live separately. To start all over again, he answered himself. It's unlikely you have no home now, no job other than this one. You don't have any money set aside for emergencies? No, I shrugged. Of course, I could do something, like rent a room. Here in this city, I need to sort myself out. Something's going on in my soul. Has his attitude towards you changed since that incident? I think I'm becoming less and less his wife, more and more a stranger. Sweet boy, the waiter came to tell us it was 10 minutes till closing time. We paid. Calling a cab, Anna asked, and thank you for telling me everything. We'll figure something out together. A few days later, I realized I was pregnant. I felt awful. My head felt heavy all the time, nauseous, and the day ahead of me with its 1,000 responsibilities. There was little hope in 2 cups, tea, coffee, and a couple of pills, which I always kept in my purse. And the golden autumn lived its life. The day outside the window is gray, cold slush, and I crossed the threshold and smells of milk porridge and pierogi. Warm on the shelf, waiting for me light blue slippers. Our old people are just waking up, but the hallway was already brightly lit. As I passed the hallway, I thought that on Christmas Eve, the Christmas tree would flash its lights mysteriously. And we will put presents under it, as we did last year, for all the inhabitants of our house. They'd be delighted at the very sight of those shiny boxes tied with bows. But not everyone can go down the hall. So Vanessa changes into her Santa Claus costume. Because of her size, she's always Santa Claus. And we'll go to those who can't get out of bed. And not everyone's relatives are coming. New Year's Eve is a busy time for everyone. And just give yourself a break. You want not to get up from the couch, stupidly watch TV. I can understand that. I would right now too. Aside from the ceiling of little daily chores, change diapers, wash, handle, feed, mop the floors. There were some extra chores today. Wendy made a house call to the ENT doctor for today. She was very annoyed that her hearing was dropping, and a barber was to visit us that day to give haircuts to all the men and women who wanted them. We called a barber once a month. I wanted to stop by Anna's house to say hello and ask how she was after yesterday. After all, for an old woman, half a bottle of wine in one person is a healthy violation of her diet. But Anna was still asleep. I saw only the motionless outlines of her fragile figure under the blanket. It was a rough night tonight, Lucy complained, turning in. Why? Vanessa asked. We were changing into our nurse's uniform, a short robe and pants. But for Vanessa and her figure, it was more appropriate to call them pants. So did Lucy hold out? She sat in our tiny cubbyhole and took her time getting up from the couch to change. First, this new grandfather on the second belly suffered James from Ward 8. Vanessa never confused anyone. She memorized all our new residents at once. Yeah, he's breaking it from the semolina. And he didn't say anything to anyone. And his family didn't tell him. And that's what we had for dinner. I changed his diaper 4 times last night. He won't stay in a dirty one for a minute. Weak old man. And what a voice. And how stupid everything is, and people talk loudly. And here she's screaming all the way down the hall. Lucy, sign it. I'm shitting myself again. It's a good thing he was in bed. I would have collapsed by morning. And Wendy put on quite a show. First, she demanded I take her blood pressure. Then her heart was racing. Gave her some drops. Then she wants her blood pressure taken again, and she better call Kevin to come over. Because I've seen enough. You're waiting here? You can't wait till we're all dead. Less work. What a parasite. Vanessa couldn't take it anymore. Aha. And now she after her night concert, which is not by request of workers, crumbles to her. The doctor will come today, and you'll find yourself to blame again. I'm just making eyes at you, and here you are disturbing me with your buckets and mop. How do I understand her relatives? Who would chew on such a girl? Can she stand it at home? The day rolled on, but thoughts did not go out of my head, and that in normal times, and things that in normal times wouldn't be annoying, which I would have laughed at this time, forced me to be silent and not to snap. Chuck and William, when I scrubbed their floors, once again argued Chuck all his life, and in recent years, and especially was convinced that there was no more terrible strain in life, more tremendous work than the war. That was the first time I heard that from him, by the way. And what do you think? A daughter and a battle is work, hard work. And between battles, we never let the shovel out of our hands. Digging and digging trenches. It was a pity to leave them when we had to. And such labor, especially in winter, was freezing on the ground. And how many days we didn't sleep on the move. Supported each other by the hands on the march. About us. You probably didn't even think that we also plow with our last strength. Where are the horses? William was getting hot. Don't you want a lumberjack? Or our army didn't need wood? Or were we not a labor front? Only the horses were spared more than us. I had to have a hernia operation. I was already in the hospital, but only some scum bribed him to take my place. And I had huge trees to fell. I got there and watched these logs floating down the river, and I had no strength to stand up. The wind shook me, and yet death was not standing over you every minute. Chuck shook his head. There's one kid I won't forget. He wasn't 18 years old yet, probably, and so he wanted to lie behind my machine gun. I let him. As long as there was a lull, no bread yet. I didn't realize that the machine gunner was being hunted. I turned around with an empty kitten, and he was lying there. A sniper's bullet right in his forehead. And death didn't hunt for us. And death didn't hunt for us. William exploded. Did you even have a hero? At least you knew your mother and wife would get a funeral. Got a brave death. And from us it didn't come. They died like flies. They were treated like flies. So, in general, they swatted the grave. When else will the relatives find out if they dare to ask? From illness, from hunger, from weakness at work. The Urkas will slaughter him. There were 1,000 reasons. You've been eating your lunch out of a pot. And as a great favor, when we were on kitchen duty, we were allowed to lick the kettles of convicts in the hermitages. They're empty, but the walls shine. It is the bosses can soup a few spoonfuls at the bottom or porridge to the walls burned. It depended on it whether we survived or not. And you'll never get that shame out of my soul. And now, when my granddaughter asks me, why didn't you, grandfather, fight in the war? What could I tell them? Practical Chuck was a very kind man. He didn't want to argue at all, especially not with William. They agreed on a lot of the same books, loved the same books, remembered the same things about our town. When one of them felt unwell, the other would rush for the nurse or Kevin to call for help. We had our kinks, of course, he agreed. And you can tell your granddaughter that you did a lot as a labor front, too. You were rehabilitated. It must have been a small thing. The carelessness of denunciation. I didn't want to snitch, and what's 8 years for espionage? And that my father and brother were taken in my case and both stayed in the camps. My father, an old village teacher, died in a lumber camp. Foresaw his end, wrote William, I feel I'm going to die soon. Slowly preparing my mother for this thought. He died on a steamship on his way to Magadan. We got the certificates afterwards. Buried at sea. I did little flooring in their room. I knew in advance what each of them would say. Tula I saw already after lunch our old men were stretching from the dining room, and I recognized among them at once. She had as straight as a back and walked slowly only because Wendy was in front of it. Anna saw me too. She called out to me, It'll be a minute. Come to my place. I want to offer you something. There was a time when I couldn't imagine my life without working within 4 walls. After a while, I'd start to flounder. By the end of the vacation, I was bored, but I could do without work now. There was a lot less energy. I would find something to occupy the day and take my time rising and drinking the cup of coffee in a chair by the window with sunlight on my eyelids. Over the years, the imagination develops more and more. And even in solitary confinement, a person does not get bored. After all, one closes his eyes and such pictures appear before him. But maybe, despite all the dirt, all the hard work every day, I am drawn into my work anew. And by the middle of the day, I already begin to love it, because it is impossible not to perceive our house, otherwise as a big family. Today, me and the girls, well, I mean Vanessa, Nurse Kate, Nana, and I stood in the hall and discussed such an exhibition. We're going to do one for Birthday Boys Day. We have one every month. We should catch our old people and take pictures of them so they're as touching as they are in real life. Not just, a face like a passport. We glued them on some large paper boards, and we will write wishes and gifts for each of them near each photo. We should think about it too, Mina said. I've already agreed with a confectionery factory in the form of charity. They will give us candy, so we'll have sweets. All old people like sweets. But to think of some little things to make them happy, Wendy. Helen to buy a package, advised Vanessa. To poke them in the face with the harmful ones they're so excited about. Yes, these ladies will not please. Agreed Nina. And today this Kelly came. Who's who? Yeah, a girl. She's young. She looked at Wendy, gave her these funny candles. You put them in bouche, and then you light the edges. They're long. And the flame heats up or something. It has this healing effect, so you know where Wendy told her to put those candles. I guess, Nina grinned. You got him by the nod, Vanessa. It's kind of forbidden to swear bad words here, but for her the rules of social life are not an issue. Wait till Helen makes the hairdresser cry, and there will be a full conflict. At least I know what to get Helen, laughed Kate. A glass with a cup underneath. You know, the kind you get on a train, say, from Russian railroads. She'll be touched. There had been more going on in Martha's life lately than in her entire life. She had gotten used to the idea that life would drag on, taking its time and nothing interesting would happen to her. If you thought that way, it made no difference whether you were 20, 30, or 50 years old. In any case, there was another piece of life ahead, which, obviously, would pass in the same way. It was only Mom's cats that were more or less dynamic. And there were kittens in the house, sometimes completely blind and helpless, who had to be taken care of like everyone else. You had to take care of them like all small children, to get up for hunger cries, even at night to warm milk or mixture from a syringe with the needle removed, to warm a film on the radiator, to wrap them in a warm one. They were given sick or mutilated animals. It was painful to look at, and they took them to the veterinary clinic, nursed them back to health after surgeries, gave them shots, washed their eyes, pumped their ears. The happiest thing was to give their pets to new owners, if there was someone who wanted to take them. After all, the animals were all unbred. But cats are amazing. Even if you had to climb for them in a dirty basement, and there they sat and looked at a man with the same haughty, truly royal look. People should learn such a sense of dignity. Martha had a pet, which was already clear that it would stay with them forever. The cat named Bro was middle-aged, striped, and catastrophically fat. His mom had looked him up outside the chicken store, where she buried the backs of her many feline family members for soup. Next to the door lay a fat cat in a collar. Mom bent down to pet him and read the sign on the collar that said, "Good, please don't feed him. He's on a diet." The owner's home address and phone number were listed too. The cat looked at the woman carefully, saw nothing from Yasnov in her hands, and lost interest in her. Then my mother saw Bro more than once, and then met in the same store in line for chicken with his mistress, already not young, but very anxious. "We're going away," she complained. "My mother-in-law is having a stroke. We're moving in with her. I'll take care of the old lady. Only the cat can't stand it. Where will I put the Bro? I don't know. Such a smart, soulful cat. And what did you feed him so?" Perplexed Lilia. "How many cats do I keep? But I have none. Yes, he eats no more than any other cat. The doctor said he had a metabolic disorder and had to go on a diet. No more sour cream, no more cream. And there's the chicken. Fished specialty food additives. Lily kept her eyes on Bro for a couple more days. Then she wrote off his collar and called his landlady's cell phone number. She couldn't bear the thought that such a colorful and affectionate animal would end up on the streets. In the new house, Armour did not quarrel with anyone, fed him separately as he ate without hurrying to taste. At this time, other cats, already finished with their portions of Sambo, leading revenge torpedoes, rushed to his bowl. And who was the first to eat? The one who ate. All fiercely spoiled fed cats Lily well, but those who had recently been homeless, there was still a reserve, left appetite for Bro, sat next to him, watched how strangers spread with his food, and confused politely poked Ammer. And then he followed his masters. He looked into their eyes almost humanly expressive and said meow, saying, "I am hungry." That's when Martha took him into her care. Since then, I personally Bro's saucer stood on the windowsill, and Martha stood next to him while he ate, driving away from other applicants. And Brock spent all the time that he didn't eat or visit the cat litter box in Martha and bed, sprawled out on the pillows. What does it say about lonely women and kitties? Sad thought Martha, especially about old maids. She had already resigned herself to the idea that no one would ever fall in love with her. She looked in the mirror for a couple of minutes a day, just to see if her hair was okay. Could she go to work like that? She perceived her apparent lack of beauty as a kind of justification for her loneliness, as an order from above. You have a different destiny, and there's no need to get involved in family life. Lily could never buy her anything that made Martha stand out, that she liked, and her clothes were the most modest. As Martha thought to herself over the refectory, perhaps now. When Martha was already working, she could go shopping and pick up a more colorful and fashionable closet. Well, at least on sale. But it never occurred to her. Finding herself in any large shopping center, she either hurried to the grocery department or dared to go into the household of all these stores and stores, where behind the glass doors rows of skirts hung in rows and feathers stood in rows of boots. It was hardly as if the friendly girls were shying away from them. She subconsciously waited for them to say to her, "Where are you going with your pig's snout?" Sometimes she allowed herself to sit in the center of such a store on special benches for visitors. Even it was a kind of immersion in luxury. The floors shone, on which on special cars from time to time drove cleaners. Murmuring Fountain burned a lot of lamps, was always warm, even in winter. To the right carried delicate aromas. There was a department where they sold handmade soap. To the left floated the smell, the freshness of roasted coffee. Nearby, a small kiosk sold dressed-up ice cream, pink and yellow, green, brown, raspberry lemon on Tashkova, chocolate balls in Athens cones. Opposite, sparkled unbearably rings earrings, necklaces in the jewelry department. Passing by, chirping tall girls with long legs, heeled boots, loose hair. They were so young, so confident. Martha rose heavily, picked up the bag that stood at her feet. Bread, cotton laundry detergent, otherwise the smell from the cats would not go away. And going home wouldn't even occur to her. It would have seemed an unthinkable dare to go on a trip. She'd never even seen the sea. Maybe if her mother hadn't started this shelter at home, Martha would have thought about it. What's her excuse in life? Not the numbers she puts into the computer every day at work. The strongest feelings Martha experienced were given to her by books. She was not distinguished by exquisite taste in reading since childhood, swallowed what she could get her hands on in the library. With the advent of the internet, she moved there for her birthday. Her mom got her a cheap laptop. And Martha liked horror stories, all sorts of epics about vampires, werewolves, and bloody villains. She could never identify with the heroine of a love novel because she thought that the image of a gray mouse with her blatant beauty would be too fat for her. But the atmosphere of anxiety, the mystical creatures, the climax of horror gave life the same spice to life as spices to a pleasant dish. And one could be sure. After work, you'd find Martha hogging the corner of the bed, and next to her a brio and a plate with a couple of sandwiches. Martha, or reading away and won't let go until she's done, or watching another movie from the thrillers and horror section. The only friend Martha had was her neighbor Daria, though she was younger, but she was someone she could talk to occasionally, invite unobtrusively for a cup of coffee. True, Daria had a very handsome husband, with whom Martha was always in a state of shock. And as she was visiting a neighbor, she hurried to leave. But when Daria said she was going to live somewhere else, Martha immediately felt uneasy. On the one hand, she shouldn't have cared. Daria has her own family. What did Martha have to do with it? On the other hand, it was a shame to lose her only friend. And Martha knew that Daria wouldn't just leave. After all, she and her husband had recently been newlyweds, dreaming of having children. Suddenly, Daria decided to move out. Maybe there was something she needed help with, and then Martha decided to go to Golden Autumn after work to find out. It was very unusual for her, a whole trip. It was already dark when she finally reached the boarding house with 2 transfers. How did she get there? She had to walk a long way where there were no sidewalks, and on the roadway she had to dodge cars. Several times Martha thought she was going to get hit, and then she breathed a sigh of relief as she walked up to the front porch of the boarding house. Who are you here to see? A woman who sat at the entrance behind a special counter and knitted. The janitor, probably not to be preserved. An old black woman with glasses. On the records, something white airy. It was very warm in the boarding house. It smelled of porridge. Martha didn't have to go anywhere far. She was glad she could ask right there at once. Tell me please, I'm Daria Serebriakova's neighbor. She works here. My mom and I can't reach her. She's doing well. She goes to work as a janitor. She wanted to answer them. But there was a thin old woman walking down the hall. Her gray hair was styled in a high updo. The woman was carrying an electric kettle. She slightly covered her eyes and said to Martha, "Come with me, I'll tell you." Shoe covers, shoe covers. And the janitor shoved Martha a pair of shoe covers made of denim. Anna waited for her while Martha tied those purse shoe covers around her ankle. When she led her to her room, Martha looked around perplexed. Is this a nursing home? It's a luxury hotel. Such a big room. 2 windows, couch, flowers. It wasn't until Anna invited her in and Martha walked over and sat down that she saw a man sitting in the chair across from her. At the same time, he raised himself slightly, extending his hand to Martha, saying hello. And Anna introduced him. This is Kevin, our doctor. Briefly, she recounted the whole story to Martha. Daria had been brutally humiliated by her husband. And since she is an orphan, she has nowhere to go. So Anna offered to let her stay in her apartment for the time being. Martha was so shocked that she forgot about the interesting young man sitting across from her. Besides, she had a pattern. The more interesting the man, the more restrained she should be. The last thing she needed was for him to think she'd lost her mind. Freak. Who do you think you're imposing on? Dashka. She's like me, she'll stand up for herself. No way, Martha agreed. Kevin, you'll take the girl home. Sure. And that smile wasn't meant for Martha, of course. It was too much. It's how a man smiles at a woman. What kind of woman is Martha? In the car, Martha tried to behave as conspicuous as possible. She sat in the back seat, cowered in a corner, and kept quiet the whole way. All she said was where to go. All she wanted was to get there as soon as possible. She didn't even feel comfortable in the cab. What surprised her most was that when they arrived, Kevin got out of the car and went to walk her back to her apartment. She had a premonition that as soon as her mom opened the door, her nose would be hit with the cat smell. How much cleaning up after these cats? How much bleach? There's still a new one who has to be accustomed to the clutch. That Kevin seems slow on the landing to you. Like he wanted to ring the doorbell where Daria no longer lived. Maybe he wanted to talk to her husband. But Kevin only nodded at Martha and started down the stairs. Kevin, on the other hand, thought to himself that Daria would never forgive him. And that it was a terrible thing to fall in love with a friend's wife. And he hardly knew her as a person on that unfortunate evening when the alcohol had played a cruel joke on him and her. What to do now? A serene life had long surrounded him. As a young boy, he had been sent by his parents to his grandmother's care, but it was not the village most of us imagine. At the word grandmother's village, my grandmother became the owner of her ancestors' dacha. Her grandfather, a rich factory worker, had built this wooden terem to bring his large family here for the summer. It stood on a mountain. There were countless balconies, cans, and a slab or two-story house, fanciful wooden lace. My grandfather built this house in 1915. From time to time, the house was painted according to what paint was available. And when in the 90s grandmother proved that she is a direct heiress of that very factory worker, local authorities were glad to give her the mansion promised finally. But maybe she'll finish it. At that time, it was scary to enter this place. On the main balcony, the wooden floors had almost collapsed. They had to be rebuilt. The roof was leaking. In the corridor, the pioneers crucified a big bat on a mop. Let them play the ghost, scare the entrance. Grandma sold her luxurious 5-room apartment in the city and invested all the money in rebuilding the family nest. Having finished with the urgent construction work, she even went into the subtleties, trying to return the house to its former appearance. She found a samovar at a jumble sale, then bought a piano with a candelabra from an acquaintance, who was also about to throw it away. Little Kevin could not quite appreciate the troubles of his grandmother, but the house played a big role in his fate, because he perceived it as a living being. Soon creaking became a sight to him. Every staircase step he, and the night wake him suddenly, would unmistakably tell what is visible from the window of each room and how the sun wanders through it, at what time the sun peeks through the window, at what time it leaves the main balcony, on which, according to surviving memories of the family of the factory worker, drank evening tea. Before, there was a marvelous view of the plain. Now the trees had grown up around it. If there was anything to admire, it was the forest. But it was here that he had his encounter with the unknown beyond, which later led him to write books. Kevin believed that in the old fireplace lived the housekeeper. His presence was especially felt on the fairy tale days of Christmas, when there was a real hall here, a real Christmas tree, which also seemed to be about the shower bath. In the morning, she was streaked with light from the windows. She was a real forest fir tree. In the evening, however, it was especially bright with glittering rain and trees, drenched in silver and gold. It seemed magical. The houseboy didn't limit himself to a gift put in a special stocking at Christmas. And it was always something mysterious. An old picture night, a ship with a loaf sitting on its oars, and a girl standing in the stern with a lantern in her hand. It seemed you could touch those waves with your finger, that fire in the lantern, or the snow globe in the mesmerizing solitude of the girl sitting on the bench. She was ready to wait an eternity for someone to sit still like that, and the snowflakes kept swirling and swirling above her head. Kevin then was ready to break the balloon, so that the girl at least did not freeze to death or lay under the Christmas tree ornate box. The surprise clappers, each of which was a mystery in itself, and always this one turned out to be put in unnoticed by Kevin. He would, sometimes suddenly, wake up in the night and run to see if the present was already there or not. But he could never catch the houseboy coming. And in the pond behind the house, of course, there were mermaids. And Kevin could never look at the painting in peace, because I'm sure that's exactly what they had going on here. Only he never caught one. And when he was a boy, he often left it on the big mountain. The sun was not by the pond something for mermaids, a hair comb or an old grandmother's shawl. By morning, it was all gone without a trace. At the age of 5, he wrote his first story, dedicated to the same scoops. It was in the fall. He said goodbye to them for the whole endless winter, because who would want to beat the thick ice in one shirt to go ashore and sit in the freezing night, counting in the light of the month his long hair? Kevin went down to the ice more than once, kneeling down and wiping the ice as if he were wiping a window. But all he saw was a mask dead in the snow, a bubble of air. He hoped that a strange maiden face with expressive eyes would penetrate from that side of the ice, and he would understand without words what the mermaid wanted to tell him. He wrote his first stories, though in fact they were probably fairy tales, because they featured the same fairy tale characters, the good and evil spirits of Rusalka's old house, who lived in the old pond, a forest witch who has a hut somewhere in the sky that no one can find. But if you care, you're bound to stumble upon it. And then watch out. And over everything the spirit of the old house with its sturdy doors and other ladders hovered, with the wooden closet that smelled elusively of Grandma's old powder, her perfume with a month lingering in his bedroom window with yellowed tomes of books. When the boys he went to school with came to visit him, they would sit for long stretches of long December, January evenings by the fuel fireplace. That's when his story began. He didn't dare read them from his notebooks, but he told them, and the boys were infected and frightened. "How do you know about the witch?" Alex asked, flapping his nose. Kevin never admitted that it was all made up by him. "He told it all to my grandmother. Her grandmother used to tell her. It sounded convincing." And the boys immediately started arguing. "I'm telling you it's by the spring." Alex was hot. "My father and I went hunting when we went hunting. He didn't show me the hunting hut over there. It's abandoned now. That's where the witch lives." "Oh, come on." Mike mockingly contradicted him. "If it were so easy, I would have seen it 1,000 times already. And in fact, you meet her only if you get lost. You have no defense. You don't know where to run to people. That's when the witch comes for you." The boys were soaked. It was getting dark outside the window. And grandmother, who sat by the table and knitted attentively, listened to all this. She also collected notebooks, shoved them carelessly to her grandchildren, folded them, kept them safe. And then, leafing through these notebooks, written in childish handwriting, horrified and ashamed of his naivety, he still no. And he drew from them some ideas that could only come to a child with his imagination. And without realizing it himself, he tried his best to keep that child in him. And yet at first, at his grandmother's request, he got a real profession. He graduated from medical school. He had a rare gift, a brilliant photographic memory. It was enough for him to read a textbook, and he could, closing his eyes, retell what was written there at the exams without any problems. Fortunately, the university had brilliant teachers, and Kevin was fascinated by his studies. He graduated, worked in a hospital for a few years, then moved to a boarding house as a doctor to the elderly. But in parallel, he continued to write. His road in literature was relatively successful. After years of refusals, not recognizing poisonous criticism without despair, and the desire to give up everything, he began by winning one literary contest or another. Then there was a novella describing a 19th century boarding house. The girls are taken out of town to a farm where they will spend the whole summer swinging on swings, catching butterflies with a net, reading poetry, and strolling through the alleys under an umbrella. This idyllic picture is shattered by a new pensioner who has just returned from Hungary with her parents. She is full of legends about the vampires, werewolves, and other non-good things there. At first, the girls listen to her stories as scary fairy tales and assure her that here in the wilderness nothing like that can be. But soon Maria comes to a different conclusion. She knows the signs that the girls ignore. Maria realizes that the vampires have reached those places, and if not to fight them, all awaits doom. And only she, knowing from ancient legends techniques to fight ghouls, manages to stop the invasion of the immortals. This story went to the readers and soon came out a separate book. And then there were more and more. If Kevin once dreamed of a bookshelf on which will stand only his books, then now much has already been written about the ideas in his head dreamed. What's a bookshelf for? A whole rack of books. But over all his works hovered the ghost of the old house. All the fears he so convincingly conveyed to others were born there. If he didn't get a line written in a day, it was an empty day. He was desperately sorry. It had faded into oblivion. Time, after all, could give birth to worlds, for could weave a shining web of intent and words. He did not understand people for whom it was natural and taken for granted to waste days and years going to work. Good, if more or less favorite, but more often the one with a heart he was indifferent to. And then to come back tired and live out the evenings at a desk, sitting in front of the TV or going out with friends, but not creating anything that time would preserve. Kevin considered such people the hotels of life, the mad motors of far more than had ever descended, and the hand of some madman in a casino. It was about life, writing anything now. He asked his acquaintance when he had high hopes. Thoth looked away for a moment. But now you realize, brother, there's no time, that I have a book lying around that I've started. Kevin, I wanted to say that life will never give so much time that you can drown in your work. And a book forgotten for years dies, too. Its characters, it's made flat and cardboard. He sat down to his work at 4, giving it his best hours, when he had strength and his head was fresh, and got up having done what he set out to do. Then he could live like all normal people, work at his main job, meet with friends, go to the theater and stores. But more often than not, he didn't do it like everyone else. He went wandering wherever he could get something for his new thing. Even if not a picture that evoked this or that association, the thought of God knows how this mysticism of creativity originates. A branch of kachut in the fall sky lit by a window snowcap on the ridge posts. Everything could miraculously be reborn, become a page in a book. And you don't get bored sitting in this town for years. A schoolmate once threw it to him. He just told me how he'd come back from Spain near the hotel. There he lived as sunbathed, bathed, what he ate, where he went on excursions. He was rubbing his phone, showing countless pictures from the I'm in the Background series. He wanted to emphasize that if it weren't for the job he toils at from morning to night, there would not have been this 2-week trip to Barcelona in his life. And from the thrust of the full, Kevin took off his glasses. They were sitting in a cafe that, contrary to the trends of the time, had been there for 50 years. Their parents used to come here for tea and chocolate scrap when they were students. Then they themselves used to come here for coffee and condensed milk during their college years. It was also glorious. Coming back from the movie theater, freezing to a state or hole. Running in here and getting an empty, steaming cup in their hands. The same were now standing in front of Arseny and his companion. Even the cups haven't changed. What do you think it's like to live a boring life without going anywhere? He asked again. How did you come to be so spiritually poor that you are bored with yourself? He wanted to say that he too was going to the Iberian Peninsula someday, to stand outside the cathedral in honor of the Holy Family and hear the wind singing, resonating off the towers. And Tony Gotti thought that the music of the Creator himself would be heard here. You can't record such a thing on a tape. But he held back and kept silent. Suddenly did not realize by his friend, it was secondary to the quality of the hotel, where to live and the food, which could be tasted and admired or bypassed in a foreign country. Anna, with whom he was separated by years of generation, was closer to him in this respect. And of course, when she asked him for any favor, he was always happy to try to fulfill her request. But when Martha got into his car, this not very young and not at all pretty girl wrapped her arms around herself, an instinctive gesture that shows one is closed to socializing and talking, a gesture of don't touch me. It made him look at her more closely. There was that depth and subtlety in her that meant beauty to him in the first place. And she was helpless, so helpless. He felt like walking her back to her apartment, leaving her already safe. And then he was coming home and already approaching the entrance. He looked up at his windows. He always left a light on in the hallway. And now he saw the clear silhouette of a dog standing with its front paws on the kitchen windowsill. The dog was gazing at the subject outside the window waiting. I was unspeakably lucky. I realized that my job had to be changed immediately for several reasons. And because of the fact that I am now not allowed to do heavy physical labor. And when you're caring for the sick, you can't do it. But most importantly, I didn't want anyone to know about my pregnancy except Anna. And first of all, Kevin. It would have been a horror of horrors for me, as the young people say. If he had to go against his feelings and marry me like a decent man, I no longer hoped to find a suitable place for me. When I saw an announcement that a small store needed Florescu, I went for an interview and quite unexpectedly I got the job. And I warned the owner that I was pregnant. But she said if everything is good with my health, I will try to reduce the maternity leave to a minimum. I will give almost everything that I earn nanny, but work will not quit. And I got the go-ahead. It was as if I got to my favorite profession and worked frantically self-consciously. I came long before the opening of the store and stayed in it until almost midnight. Good thing the smell of flowers didn't irritate me. In a small pool in the middle of the hall floated roses. I pulled them out of the absorbent cotton, fresh, as if they'd just been plucked from the bush and dewdropped. With my first paycheck, I rented a small studio apartment near the store. I thanked her for being kind enough to let me stay with her and gave her back the key to the apartment. Honey, you still don't want to tell Kevin? Anna didn't go on. She knew I'd figure it out. No, I said firmly. And your husband, Andrew? I've only heard rumors, and believe me, he started courting our neighbor Martha. Poor girl. I remember her, Anna said thoughtfully. She used to come to see me. Poor thing, she had such a battered look. That's why he chose her. I said. He has a thing about children, some kind of mental disorder. He's incapable of procreation himself, but he wants a submissive wife who'll do whatever he says, spend the night with whoever he says or does. I feel sorry for Martha, but she seems to be in love and won't listen if I tell her the truth. But you can sue for housing. I guess that's what I'll do. I've been thinking, the apartment's in his name, but I put up my own money. I think I can prove it. I'll get over the whole thing and do it. When he said goodbye, he crossed me with a blessing. It's nearing the end of a gloomy autumn evening. Outside the window, the rain changed to snow and vice versa. I wasn't expecting anyone, unless some young man would run out to buy a rose to give to his beloved on a date. It was warm in the pavilion. I made several bouquets, which I expected to sell the next day. Quietly, the bell at the door jangled. I looked up. Kevin was standing in front of me. It was impossible to hide the pregnancy, but he wasn't looking at my changed figure. He was looking into my eyes. "Doria, will you marry me?" he asked. It was probably the most romantic setting, fragrant with roses and lilies, and then a declaration of love. I realized that Anna had broken her promise to keep quiet and told Kevin everything. Maybe I should have been proud, let him know that I would think about it. But I was waiting so long for those words that I could only nod. I hadn't seen Andrew for a long time, and even though we lived in the same town, he was out of my sight, and that was good. I did work until almost the birth, although Kevin asked me to leave the place and devote all my time to taking care of myself and the baby. In the early spring, I gave birth to a baby boy. Kevin had said many times that he dreamed of having a daughter like me, but he was happy when he held his son in his arms. On a lovely May afternoon, we were walking in the park with the stroller. Peter was a very calm baby. We had been walking for about an hour, and he was still dozing serenely. "Would you like some ice cream?" Kevin asked me. He went to the kiosk, and I stood in the shade and waited for him in the distance. I noticed another couple, Andrew and Martha. My poor girlfriend looked completely miserable. I realized that she'd heard her companion say something derogatory. Andrew met my eyes. No, he would not be able to subdue and break me again. I saw him bring his hand to his lips. He seemed to want to bite it to hold back a cry of rage and indignation. Too happy. In his opinion, I had the look. I turned toward Kevin, who was approaching us with 2 ice cream sundaes.